Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Fell in Love with Tatsumaki Part 2. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
It had been done by Izuku Midoriya. With a single blow, he had advanced on the big, pointless robot and destroyed it. It made him feel very good because it gave him the opportunity to think back on the day he had tried to save Keychain, the day that would ultimately change his life. As he considered the past, he thought, it's the same situation as back then, but it's different this time. Yes, it was different, but there was an issue. Izuku took a few moments to realize what was happening. He was going down. He yelled, I'm falling. H. But wait, I have the power of All Might, don't I? He had an urgent thought. That thing was clobbered to nothing, thus, landing ought to be a piece of cake. He did possess the power of All Might, so he should be all right. The pain, however, began when the teenager turned to face his right arm and both legs and saw them futilely flapping against the wind. He screamed in agony as he fell further, using his left arm to support his right arm. Paradoxically, it was at this point that he understood what All Might had previously told him. Remember, child, you might be a vessel now, but you're really just a hastily constructed thing. Prepare yourself for a systemic shock. That's what he meant. Then, I'm a fool. Izuku pondered in insight. This is All Might's power, of course. Only 10 months had passed. I haven't even begun to exert control over it. Right now, I'm limited to housing a borrowed power. If only briefly, I'm amazed that I have such a large head. Izuku abruptly pulled himself out of that bad situation. He was wise enough to know that it was wrong to feel sorry for himself. As a result, his perspective changed. Man, get a grip, he pondered. So far, my only rights are to stand on the starting line. Nothing. Now consider. How should I proceed? How'd I? Well. Izuku abruptly ceased to fall. Then he realized where he was in the air and he saw it there. He was simply suspended in midair, not touching anything on the ground, neither falling nor moving. He turned to face it in time to see Tatsumaki, but before he could speak, he sensed someone approaching. When Tatsumaki said, HMPH, and here I was impressed, she was a little let down. Seriously, who goes ahead and breaks almost all their limbs? Idiot. Tatsumaki. Izuku uttered the word, but still, asked Tatsumaki. I guess you did a good job, nice work, Midoriya. Midoriya smiled brightly and said, thanks. Thus, the journey to the ground proceeded smoothly. Tatsumaki released her grip on the teenager after levitating both of them to the ground. The girl was standing beside Izuku, who was now lying on his stomach on the ground. According to Tatsumaki, that had to have hurt. Then she lowered her gaze to Izuku. Are you ready to go? I should probably take you to get some help. Izuku was about to respond, but the only thing that escaped his lips was a moan of agony, and then he grabbed his arm. Tatsumaki sighed and instantly used her power, which caused her and the teenager to levitate in the air once more. We're leaving? Izuku asked, perplexed. But what about the... Tatsumaki questioned. You got enough points, right? After waiting for Izuku to nod, she went on. Then we're leaving. The test will be over anyway. The test is over, declared Music Mix. Tatsumaki said, see, what did I tell y'all? Now let's go. This academy should have some medical personnel for a dangerous practical exam like this. Sure. Izuku answered back. Thank you, Tatsumaki. Apart from snubbing him and taking off, Tatsumaki remained silent. However, they were unaware that the other examinees had been concentrating on the two of them. Thus, it just so happened that the majority of the current reactions were ones of surprise, amazement, and bewilderment. Particularly with Oako, who was worn out. Though she was on the ground, she was no longer restrained by the debris. She was now observing Tatsumaki and Izuku take off. She smiled as she thought, that's a relief, she saved him. Shortly thereafter, however, she sagged her head on the floor from exhaustion. That was really draining. Soon, I want to take a bath. Then there was Keychain, also known as Itsuki. He saw Izuku and Tatsumaki taking off, but he didn't react well to them. Therefore, it was not surprising that he was watching them fly away while glaring angrily at their figures. Luckily, this did not apply to the other examinees. As each of them watched the scene of the destroyed robot and Tatsumaki taking off with the teenage boy as if nothing had happened, they were assembling. But it was a truly spectacular sight to them. One examinee remarked, that kid. He sent that gimmick thing flying with one punch. Another examinee remarked, "It's probably just a strength-enhancing quirk, but that was something else." One examinee questioned, "But how did a guy with that insane power of a quirk get such a timid little ball of nerves all the time? It doesn't make sense." Another examinee asked, "Maybe it was just an act to outwit us?" One examinee responded, "Can't see it. There's no way that would benefit him in any way." One other examinee reported, "Yeah, well, no matter how you slice it, that kid is incredible. And he already got the favor of someone as popular as Tatsumaki. Wow, I guess the girl really had a reason to argue for him." Iida had a different idea. He was still standing, but he wasn't talking about the two with the others. He also had a different perspective than those examinees. "Are all of you blind?" he pondered. "That's absolutely not it." He acted quickly to save that girl. He was out of danger and had no more time, but from what I've seen of him, he should have had enough points to leave the big robot alone like us. Did he do it to attract attention? No, that's most definitely not it. He jumped in without hesitation despite the danger, as I could see the fear in his face even as I ran past him. Additionally, there was no assurance that Tatsumaki would save him, as she fled the scene as well. Naturally, I would have done the same if it weren't for the big test. But hold on, perhaps that was a test component. At the moment, Iida was not sure. He was attempting to understand Izuku with his hand to his chin. However, when a short, elderly woman entered, everyone's focus was taken away. A syringe was looped through the elderly woman's gray hair, which was styled into a bun. In addition, she wore a lab coat, a dress with red and yellow vest-like patterns on either side, pink boots, a pink belt, a cane, and a helmet on her head. She declared, "Go home, lads, I'll take it from here." She was not opposed by anyone. However, no one left because they were still focused on her. She gained a lot of notoriety in UA, particularly after she started giving some of the examinees candy and reassuring them. One examinee said, "She's a mainstay here at UA, always supporting the academy." "Yeah. I heard her quirk is the ability to amplify and speed up a patient's healing processes." A different examinee replied, "Her presence allows UA to go through their over-the-top entrance exams. Without her, they'd be hard-pressed to justify them." Then Iida's eyes widened a little in realization. When he recalled what Tatsumaki had said just before removing Izuku, he was equally astounded by that fact. "Let's go now. For such a risky practical exam, this academy ought to have some medical staff." "I see," Iida thought at that moment. After all, that's what the best really is. Tatsumaki was aware of it, too. That implies that he. Iida didn't complete it or give it any thought. Something told him he already knew. As he allowed himself to think about what had happened, he gritted his teeth in mild frustration and self-impact. Returning to the elderly woman, she was informed that Tatsumaki had removed the gravely wounded Izuku. She was obviously taken aback by this, but not enough to stop her. In the end, she inquired as to whether anyone was hurt before heading over to assist Izuku. "All done," said the old woman. Izuku flexed and pulled his arm. "Wow, amazing," he exclaimed, stunned. The old woman gave a kind smile. Izuku, Tatsumaki, and the elderly woman were currently in her clinic in the UA building. Regarding the woman's name, she was well known for being the youthful heroine Recovery Girl, her hero name. Another short name for her was Recovery Girl. "Finally," exclaimed Tatsumaki impatiently. The girl had been standing there waiting for Izuku to be checked out for a while. After completing that, she turned to Recovery Girl. "So you sure he's all right? This idiot almost got himself killed before, you know." Izuku was surprised and shaken. Naturally, though, he shouldn't be shocked by Tatsumaki because she never stopped verbally attacking him whenever she had the opportunity. Recovery Girl reassured, "He's fine. I assure you. Just be careful with how you use your quirk, okay?" Izuku nodded, saying, "Of course. Thank you, Recovery Girl." A grudging, "Yeah," was Tatsumaki's response. "For an old hag, you did pretty well." "Tatsumaki!" exclaimed Izuku. Tatsumaki turned to Izuku and exclaimed, "What? She's old. I don't care if she's a heroine. She should have changed that name to suit her age like a long time ago." Recovery Girl gave a small laugh in return. Naturally, though, her actions startled Tatsumaki and Izuku, who turned to her in confusion right away. Luckily, the young heroine was delighted to talk. Recovery Girl exclaimed joyfully, "It must be so nice to be young and caring to one another. I wouldn't be surprised if both of you have been seeing each other more often." At the same time, Izuku and Tatsumaki exclaimed, "WH what?" But they were unaware of how quickly their cheeks heated up. They were caught off guard by Recovery Girl's comment. However, Recovery Girl was only able to laugh before leaving to take care of other matters because they were unaware of their reaction at the time. The both of you are free to leave anytime. I have other things to attend to, she replied. However, that was easier said than done. Tatsumaki and Izuku continued to gaze at Recovery Girl, wondering what she was trying to say. However, it's possible that they did, but they were reluctant to acknowledge it to themselves. However, they eventually left the clinic together, but not before they arrived at the academy's front gate in awkward silence. The sun had already set and the majority of people had left the area by that point. Izuku said anxiously, "Well, I guess I'll be going." Tatsumaki answered, "Yeah. I guess I'll see you, Midoriya." So they left. At least that's what they ought to have done. Izuku, however, remained motionless and silent as he saw Tatsumaki turn away from him and start to leave without saying anything more. It was strange. The teenager wanted to address her. However, he was also frightened and anxious as he stretched out his other arm at her and tightened his grip on the strap of his bag. Should I simply accept things as they are? He pondered doubtfully. No, I must ask her, however. Tatsumaki, he whispered. She didn't hear his voice, though. He knew the type of person Tatsumaki could be, so he was still afraid of the result. But then something ignited inside of him. He exhibited the same bravery that he had shown during the practical exam. Thus, rather than being alarmed, he raised his voice. Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki stopped instantly. Izuku's shout surprised her a little because she hadn't anticipated it. With her hands on her hips and an angry expression on her face, she turned to face the teenager after hearing it. She said, "What is it, Midoriya?" Izuku fell silent. He might have been brave, but there was always reason to be afraid when he saw Tatsumaki's grim face. Thankfully, his bravery was intact. Izuku hurriedly repeated, "Please hear me out first." He had some things to say to Tatsumaki, so he was doing his best to remain motionless in front of her. However, his body was already twitching. "For a long time now, you've been helping me out. You stopped Keychain from burning my book, saved him and I from the mud villain and even got into a fight with All Might because you thought I was being abused by him. Where is it heading?" Tatsumaki inquired. As she watched Izuku, she considered his intention. She dropped her stern face in shock, however, when a new thought struck her. "Don't tell me that he's confessing to me, please." No, I am aware that the elderly hag was playing tricks on us, but... "Can we go out tomorrow?" Izuku inquired. "He's asking me out." "Really?" Tatsumaki let out a mental scream. The Esper reddened violently, her eyes widening as she cupped her cheeks and unintentionally triggered her quirk, which luckily did not harm anyone or anything, but Izuku was taken aback by her response and backed away in fear. "How are you, Tatsumaki?" Izuku inquired. "All right. I'm not feeling well." "Really? Who goes and asks a girl out on a date and expects it to be okay?" Tatsumaki screamed angrily. "A date? I wasn't asking you on a date," Izuku said, his cheeks turning red as he was taken aback. "I wanted to thank you by taking you somewhere tomorrow because you've been so kind to me." I then inquired as to whether we could go tomorrow, and well. Tatsumaki's quirk vanished and she became stoic after saying, "Oh, you weren't asking to go on a date." Midoriya said, "Yes, so, this wasn't a confession, isn't it?" Pretty much." Tatsumaki uttered the words, "Oh, 1 second." Izuku remained silent, but even if he had wanted to, the Esper turned away from him and then gave him a frustrated look while lightly pinching her nostrils. "I let that old hag get to me. She probably did that teasing earlier because I called her that. Grr. If it weren't for the fact that she's so old, I would definitely make her pay for this shit." Tatsumaki screamed angrily, "I'm such an idiot." "Tatsumaki," Izuku called. He was still standing, but with a confused face as he stared at the Esper. "Are you okay?" did he ask. Tatsumaki cleared her throat and turned to face him right away. "I certainly am. Why wouldn't I be?" Tatsumaki posed the question, albeit rhetorically. But Izuku did it awkwardly because he didn't know what Tatsumaki was trying to say and didn't realize the girl didn't want a direct response. "Well, it was almost like you wanted me to ask you out on a..." As though, Tatsumaki interjected. But unknown to her, she was feeling flustered while her cheeks are slightly red. But then all that changed when she turned her back at him and crossed her arms over her chest. "HMPH, Izuku, you really can be such a fool. Improve your ability to read the mood." Neither surprised nor disappointed by Tatsumaki's rudeness, Izuku apologized, saying, "So about what I suggested, are you up for it?" Tatsumaki sighed, not wanting to lose her temper, and she had a valid reason to keep it in check, but then she turned back to the teenage boy, who was obviously a little upset. "Midoriya, it won't work out," Tatsumaki stated. "You owe me nothing, and we're not friends. I helped you because I wanted to, not because of you. You witnessed what transpired earlier this morning regarding the invitation. Therefore, we will simply end up with those fucking paparazzi up our asses, even if I wanted to, which I don't, all right?" With a disappointed tone, Izuku answered, Sure. I apologize, Tatsumaki. I suppose I didn't give it much thought. I suppose that, like today, I do make foolish choices." "Phew." Tatsumaki retorted angrily, "You said it, not me." Izuku fell silent, then turned his dissatisfied gaze to the ground, which caused him to think back on the time he had destroyed that no-point robot in a negative way, making him feel foolish for what he had done, especially since the Esper had not responded. "I guess, I'll see you around." Izuku groaned. "Sorry for what just happened, Tatsumaki." Izuku then turned and started to leave, but before he could get any farther, he was surprised by a hand grabbing his shoulder and pulling him back, and then he was forced to confront the person who had done it, which resulted in a finger striking his forehead. "Ah!" Izuku gave a yelp. The teenage boy had obviously not been prepared for that, so he instinctively put his hand on Tatsumaki's forehead and waited for the one response, which naturally resulted in him looking directly into Tatsumaki's enraged, close eyes. "Don't draw such conclusions, idiot," Tatsumaki screamed fiercely. The adolescent girl was clearly upset with Izuku as she went on, so perhaps it made some sense that she didn't notice that her face was close to the adolescent boy. "Do you now regret saving that girl? I assumed you did it because it was morally correct. Do you no longer wish to be a hero?" Izuku said. He was shocked by Tatsumaki's attitude, especially since it came from her. Usually, she would just be impolite, but this time, she was truly upset with him. "Stop it. I haven't finished. You really surprised me today," Tatsumaki screamed once more before pausing and removing her hands from the teenager's face before crossing her arms over her chest. "I must admit that I wasn't entirely sure you would pass the practical exam. Even as I and everyone else were leaving, you proceeded to save that girl. That truly brought back memories of that day in the alley." Izuku was silent. He was quiet because Tatsumaki seemed so amazing to him, but if that wasn't enough, she went on, this time facing away from him. Tatsumaki said sharply, "Listen carefully, Midoriya, because I'm not going to repeat myself. You were a fool, but not nearly as much of one as the people I've seen today. You were a fool for being a hero and refusing to back down when you were alone. Even though Katsuki mistreated you, you were even more foolish for attempting to save him. Most importantly, you were a fool for attempting to express gratitude to me so recently." "Oh," Izuku muttered, no longer surprised but feeling down. "Come on, you don't have to put in any more effort." Tatsumaki went on, unexpectedly softening, "But despite all that, you turned out to be a very good person." The adolescent boy had only known Tatsumaki for 10 months, so he had seen all sides of her, but as he stood there, something different was coming from the adolescent girl. Not her usual rudeness, uptightness, annoyance, or malice, but the fact that she was actually smiling at him with an outlook that felt breathtaking because the sun was setting behind her and the wind was blowing lightly at her hair. Tatsumaki said, "Maybe, being an idiot isn't so bad." Izuku was utterly stunned by the perspective Tatsumaki was offering him, and as he gazed at her with his mouth and eyes wide open, he was unable to form words or think of anything to say. However, he was aware of one thing. Tatsumaki had opened his eyes to a different perspective. After a week, Izuku was back at home, sitting at the dining table with his mother, and he was grinning warmly at a fish he was about to eat. However, this obviously caught his mother's attention, and she became concerned right away. "Izuku? Are you okay?" his mother called him. "Why are you staring at the fish with such a vacant smile?" Izuku abruptly jolted out of his reverie. "I'm fine, I'm sorry," said Izuku. But his response was only half the truth. He was as fine as any healthy boy could be, but he was also a little lost in his own world. So after dinner he sat down at the couch and started using a hand grip while wearing a blank expression. He thought, "That is strangely not on my mind, weird. I haven't even thought about the fact that All Might hasn't contacted me during this past week. I would have figured he would want to congratulate me on the practical test or something. If I were to grade myself, I'd say I made it past the passing line of the written test and the practical test. But..." His mother, who was cleaning chores behind the teenager and had no clue what was going through his mind, spoke at that very moment. "Oh, I see. Are the results expected to be returned today or tomorrow?" she inquired. Izuku answered half abruptly, honey," she said happily, "even if you didn't make it, I still think what you accomplished was amazing." Izuku said, and then he picked up a dumbbell and started using it. I haven't even told anyone about All Might, not even my mother. She doesn't even know about Tatsumaki. All Might has to be kept a secret if he's to continue being the symbol of peace. As for Tatsumaki, I think it's best for now that my family doesn't know about her. She never really seems to cared if people knew about her anyhow. She was right about that day that she seemed to shine more than usual. I did make the right choice. Maybe I am an idiot, but if it means doing the right thing and those that matter to me, then I won't have any regrets. Izuku, quieted Izuku's mother. Izuku abruptly stopped what he was doing and turned to face his mother, who was kneeling with an anxious look on her face and holding an envelope in front of him. It arrived. It's here, she cried anxiously. Honey, it's here. Izuku grinned a little and realized immediately what his mother was referring to because the item she was holding was the outcome of the UA scores. In response, he took it into his room while his mother remained outside, pacing back and forth in nervousness. Now that he was in his room, Izuku sat on his chair by a table. Everything in the room except the lamp on his table was off, and he eyed the envelope in his hands. He didn't like it, but even he could feel doubt when he should feel confident, but instead of letting that stop him, he quickly tore the envelope with a single pull of both hands, letting a small round mechanical object fall on his table. Before Izuku knew it, a bright light blasted from the device on his table, and he watched in disbelief as it formed a square hologram screen in front of him and emitted a familiar voice. Testing, 1, 2, the voice's face then came into view. It was All Might himself, staring straight at the screen with his enormous, well-known smile. Am I visible on screen? Is it possible? Izuku yelled in surprise. Izuku certainly didn't expect to see the pro hero again in his UA results during the time All Might had been silent, but it was probably a recording, so it wasn't like he was speaking to the pro hero directly. Nevertheless, the teenage boy continued to look at the ripped envelope and then at the hologram, trying to figure out why All Might was involved in something that involved them, since All Might wasn't a staff member at the school. What? This is from Ua, isn't it? He inquired, EHHH. Then, as if that weren't enough, All Might bowed at the fictitious camera. Izuku, facing him as the hologram screen appeared to pull away from his face, revealing the pro hero at a colorful stage, wearing a business suit that was reserved for entertainers. I apologize for not getting in touch with you sooner. It took some time to juggle a few obstacles and finish this. I guess we'll be seeing a lot more of each other since it's been decided that I'll be working at UA. Now, that is, All Might said before getting to his feet. All Might will be at UA, Izuku exclaimed, startled, but relieved that he wasn't as panicked as he had been. Citizen, what is that? All Might asked. It wasn't at Izuku, though, but at the cameraman who was now pointing to his camera, as seen by the cameraman's hand. Turn to camera 2. He inquired. We'll correct it in post. I was about to tell the boys something crucial. Oh, I see. That works. Izuku was a little perplexed, and the fact that he saw All Might converse with the cameraman made it obvious that the recording had not been corrected in post, but he continued to pay attention, particularly when the pro hero spoke again. Well, you did fine on the written test, the mighty replied. As for the practical test, you. Even Izuku was starting to feel uneasy, so it was unclear why All Might paused, but the atmosphere changed when he spread his arms apart and signaled for confetti to go off all around him at once. My boy, you did a fantastic job, with pride, All Might declared. Although he didn't want to acknowledge it, Izuku was extremely concerned that he hadn't passed the practical exam. While it was true that he had busted enough robots, hearing one's results was still one of the most unsettling experiences for a teenager. Nevertheless, the video continued even after the confetti ceased and the camera once more focused on All Might's face. Not only have you impressed me, but Saitama has too. That's a good thing, All Might said. I assure you that Saitama is not easily impressed. By the way, he sends his congratulations on your passing. But my boy, that's not all, and there's more. More? Izuku asked, still watching, both perplexed and eager to learn more. Indeed, more. You made a fantastic first impression on the judges, All Might said. They were searching for children who could do more, not just those who had enough points. It just so happens that you did that, my boy. Do you believe that a department of heroics would overlook what you accomplished? After all, you risked your personal safety to defeat a robot that would give you no points even though you had enough. Perish the thought. The department cannot turn away such an applicant. Izuku was taken aback by this information. Listening to a pro hero say that his test results were excellent was one thing, but hearing that he impressed the judges was quite another. In fact, This was so unexpected and upsetting that Izuku got up from his chair in the heat of the moment. So All Might went on with pride. Consequently, use your rescue points. Every judge agree. They saw another foundational skill of heroism in you, All Might cried. Izuku was moved by that, and although he didn't think much about it or know why at the time, he was undoubtedly delighted and shocked when All Might came to light. In completion of your practical test work, the judges have made a decision based on your actions during the rescue. Izuku Midoriya, 120 points, and Tatsumaki at 84 points while we're at IT. This indicates that you did exceptionally well, kid. This is crazy, Izuku muttered, utterly shocked by the scores. 120 points for him alone? That sounded insane, but All Might was proud and impressed, and he extended his hand to him. My boy, Midoriya, go down, your hero academia is who is now. When he heard those words, Izuku finally broke down in tears. He felt relieved, happy, and even more determined than before. This outcome amply demonstrated his value, and he was now going to use it to fulfill his dream of becoming a hero. Izuku wiped away his tears with his cloth and continued, but it was only through all the help I received, Saitama, Tatsumaki, and All Might, I won't let you guys down, because with this, my life at the high school of my dreams begins. My whole life just got a jump charge. Yes, sir, Izuku yelled. Day after, 10 a.m. Izuku was walking on the sidewalk, wearing an unzipped green sweater, blue pants, and a red and white shirt underneath the sweater. The weather was pleasant, and the day proceeded as usual, with people driving or walking to different locations as the city was at peace. Amen. I really don't know what to do for her. Izuku was alone as he continued to walk, rambling in his mind. It's pretty good that I've finally been accepted into UA, and now so is Tatsumaki, but I still think I owe it to her to show her my thanks. I don't think I would have been able to pass that physical test without her encouragement and her helping me out once in a while. So what can I do? I certainly can't take her anywhere. She clearly doesn't like that. Besides, that felt really embarrassing when I got home and thought about it that day. Maybe a gift? Yes, that should work. Friends give gifts to each other, right? Izuku ran into someone out of the blue. Naturally, this caught him off guard because he had been obviously nodding off once more. As a result, he turned away from the individual and apologized to him. Izuku whispered, I'm so sorry. The adolescent boy would have gone on, but he was startled when he was able to recognize the individual. Saitama. Saitama. Where? Exclaimed a girl in the vicinity. All the others were instantly drawn to that scream. Indeed, it appeared that everyone who was out and about was ecstatic at once and scanning their surroundings to see if the well-known pro-hero was present. The man Izuku pumped into, however, looked at the teenager and nervously took off his cap. He said, shortly, pretend I'm someone else. Izuku followed instructions. Sorry, it's just someone else. One guy exclaimed, Amen, with disappointment. Another person said, that's terrible, I thought he was here. One woman replied, yeah, me too. Izuku pumped into the man, who sighed with relief. Shortly afterward, the disgruntled onlookers kept moving in their direction. Now, with the man staring down at Izuku, it was just the two of them standing alone. As the man put it, thanks, kid, you almost blew my cover, though. Izuku said, right, my bad, in apology. Luckily, the man was unconcerned. While wearing a different outfit that largely concealed his face, he was, in fact, Saitama. He had on blue pants and a hoodie with the word Opai printed on it. His hands were digging into the hoodie's side pockets. His face was mostly hidden by a cap underneath the hood of the hoodie, which was also on his head. Calmly, Saitama said, it's cool. That wasn't intentional, right? So don't worry about it then. By the way, congratulations on passing the entrance tests. I saw everything you did. It kind of reminded me of myself back when I was your age. Izuku exclaimed in surprise, huh? However, he reached a conclusion that unnerved him. Then that means you. He bows to Saitama right away. I'm terribly sorry, I didn't mean to take your special move and... Saitama interrupted, saying, kid, it's cool. Given the typical stoic expression on his face, he didn't appear to be offended by Izuku. Stand back up. I honestly don't mind if you use any of my move. Anyway, I let King take credit for some of the things I've done, so it's all right. Izuku exclaimed in surprise, huh, does he have Strongman King in mind? Then he got back to his feet, wondering. So what about you? Asked Saitama. You bumped into me. You have anything on your mind? Izuku remembered instantly. Before he ran into Saitama, he was in fact thinking about something. In fact, the more he considered it now, the more ashamed he felt because he had been distracted by his thoughts at the time. Izuku managed to say, yeah, but can we talk about this somewhere else? Saitama said, okay, sure, I know just the place. Saitama and Izuku were in a restaurant booth a few minutes later, but this was not a fancy restaurant or anything. No, they were in a typical eatery that primarily offered udon to its patrons. Additionally, it was currently less populated, which made it easier for Izuku to explain his ideas to Saitama. He continued to look stoic as he said, so, you want to get something for Tatsumaki. That's nice, but you don't have anything in mind, right? Yes, I don't. Acknowledged Izuku. He clasped his hands beneath the table, a little embarrassed. But well, I was thinking about, and well, you stay with Tatsumaki. The both of you are neighbors. So isn't it possible that you know something I can get for her? With a shoulder shrug, Saitama acknowledged, no, I got nothing. Izuku sighed with disappointment and mumbled, oh. Saitama said, but you could ask her directly. What? No. Izuku exclaimed in embarrassment. That would be too embarrassing. Please don't tell her about this. I want this to be a surprise. A surprise, huh? Inquired Saitama. Then I guess you could ask Fubuki. That's her little sister. She's a very good and open kid. Izuku, looking a little more at ease, said, I know her. But she lives with Tatsumaki. There's no way I can talk to Fubuki without Tatsumaki knowing. Saitama responded, yeah, don't be too sure of that. The response perplexed Izuku. Saitama didn't seem to be making a joke or being ironic. However, before Izuku could continue to think about him, the pro hero pulled out his phone, pressed a button, and held the device up to his ears. Then he was on the line, talking to someone in the next few seconds. Saitama said, hey, Fubuki. It's Saitama. That's right, my name is saved on your phone. My bad. Anyway, do you know Midoriya? Oh, you do? Okay. You can stop squealing now, that would hurt anybody's ear by now. Okay, so the kid wants to talk to you about your sister, so is it possible you can get Tatsumaki out of the house for at least half the hour? Alright, thanks. We'll be right there. The line was then dropped by Saitama. Izuku was half in awe. For some reason, he felt as though a barrier had been removed from his path. However, he remained silent, particularly when Saitama turned back to face him and put his phone back in his pocket. Saitama said, well, we should get going. Fubuki has us covered. Really? Inquired Izuku. But how? According to Saitama, I don't know. Now he was rising, preparing to go. But one thing I've learned in the few years I've been her neighbor. Never underestimate that girl. Oh, Izuku uttered. Then he gained self-assurance. Yes, exactly, I ought to have faith in Saitama. Even if he warns against underestimating Fubuki, I should do the same. After a while, Saitama and Izuku managed to enter the renowned Ghost Town, where Saitama and the Espers sisters resided. Additionally, it took a little longer for Saitama and Izuku to spot the apartment complex where the pro hero resided. However, before either of them could approach, they both heard a girl scream that was loud and angry, followed by a green blur that flew out of a door. The blur yelled, I can't believe you did that, Fubuki, with rage. Izuku was taken aback. He was familiar enough with that particular voice to recognize it. Tatsumaki was there, and judging by the sound of it, she had fled in a rage. Izuku said with wide eyes, that was Tatsumaki, she sounds mad. Straightforwardly, Saitama stated, that doesn't sound good. Well, Tatsumaki is out of the house. And from the looks of it, Fubuki is by herself. Now's your chance. Izuku nodded assuredly, right. From that point on, the scene changed to Saitama and Izuku making their way to the apartment door. Although Izuku's aim was obvious, Saitama chose not to follow him. He simply wished him luck instead and entered his own apartment. Izuku was now the only person standing alone in front of the Esper sisters' door. He let out a sigh. He whispered, well, I can't turn back now. Afterward, he knocked. But there was no response. Izuku heard the door being unlocked before he could knock again, and when it was eventually opened, he saw Fubuki wearing a black long-sleeve shirt underneath a gray skirt and a red and white tank top. Fubuki said, you're here, welcome, Midoriya-kun. Izuku returned the greeting, hi, Fubuki. You could really rely on Fubuki. Izuku experienced that feeling as he gazed at the happy face of the young girl in front of him. Soon after, they were both inside the apartment, facing each other while seated at opposite ends of a short table. Fubuki said, sorry I can't offer you anything. You should understand, my sister is quite strict when it comes to a lot of things. She can also tell if someone is around, so I'm going to have to erase any essence of your presence when you leave. Wow, you can do that? Izuku exclaimed in amazement. Yup. Fubuki grinned chirpily. She then took advantage of the opportunity to lift her finger upward, making small objects in the living room float a few meters into the air. See, my quirk is just like my sister. I can't blame you for not knowing. Cool, said Izuku. But wait, how can you remove an essence of someone? Isn't you and Tatsumaki's quirk telekinesis? Fubuki answered, well, yes. But it's more of a common trait than you think. The thing is, according to what my sister said, we're another branch of people with quirks called Espers. We're kind of like the second-generation people with quirks or something like that. Espers? Izuku asked in amazement. There's been rumor on the internet about people like that, but I never thought they're real. According to Fubuki, oh, we exist. But for some reason, no one knows about us. I don't know why really. Sister guessed that it's for the best, because it could cause fear amongst society. Fear? Izuku inquired, perplexed. How can people be afraid of Espers? Well, according to Sister, it's easy to understand. Fubuki replied. Today, there are about 80% of people with quirk around world, with each of them having one power, right? But in the case of an Esper, they have one or two unique powers that come along with telekinesis. That means us Espers have more than one ability. So if you think about it, people would be scared if they find out that people with more than one power begin to show up. Izuku remarked, I think I get it. Then, as he started to focus on the topic, he fell silent. Being an Esper sounds awesome, but it could be problematic if done incorrectly. There are people with common eccentricities today who abuse their power. Therefore, there may be villains as well if they have peculiarities. However, does one for all become an Esper ability as a result? No, telekinesis is a common power among Espers, based on what Fubuki just folded me. It's best to say that one for all is not like being an Esper because I haven't been able to accomplish anything similar with All Might. Wait! Izuku exclaimed, gazing wide. Then a new idea came to him. Does this mean that Tatsumaki can do other things, other than telekinesis? Fubuki said, yes. But she said she hasn't done any of that in a long time. I don't know why, though. I see, Izuku acknowledged. Fubuki inquired, so, was that all you wanted to know about my sister? No. Izuku abruptly stopped what he was doing. I mean, it was great to know about Espers since Tatsumaki is one, but that isn't what I came here for. Fubuki said, oh, so what is it? She was staring at the teenager with curiosity now. Izuku was hesitant, though. He wanted to say it, but he was hesitant because he was going to say it to the girl's younger sister, to whom he wanted to give a gift. He therefore started to hold his fingers and fidget a little in an attempt to relax. He mumbled, well, however, he turned his head away from Fubuki and went on. Your sister has been really good to me. Sure, she can be mean, but I think she means well, so I was thinking, is there something I can give to her as a bit thanks? Fubuki grinned slyly. However, she wasn't making fun of Izuku. On the contrary, she was doing the exact opposite. The teen's aim impressed her, and she didn't see anything wrong with it. With that expression on her face, she responded to him. You don't have to be embarrassed about it. It's actually cute, Fubuki replied. Izuku exclaimed in surprise. See cute? The next thing he knew, his cheeks were getting hot, and he started shaking his head wildly. Fubuki laughed in reply. She was clearly enjoying the teenager's response. As he looked down at his legs in embarrassment, Fubuki stopped laughing and started to consider the situation. Wow. That kind of teasing of Midoriya-kun surprised me. Tatsumaki must have at last found someone important. That's excellent. Who knows? If I give him this kind of support, he might grow into something more to her. So the decision has been made. I'll help Midoriya-kun so that sister can find a boyfriend. Sorry about that, Midoriya-kun. Fubuki grinned and apologized. I was just playing about, but I still think what you're doing is good, so I'll tell you. You will? Inquired Izuku. Then he turned his hopeful gaze back to Fubuki. Fubuki mumbled, yeah, but there's a bit of a problem. As she went on, the smile she had been wearing vanished. Sister isn't one to ask for anything in return, not even here. She also has no friends, so it's hard for her to express the good side of hers to others, you've noticed, right? She's always on her own, refusing to interact long with others. It's like she's made it her goal to seclude herself. Izuku said, I think I get it. Now that he was listening to what Fubuki had to say, his calmness had returned. Before that day Tatsumaki saved my book from Kachan, I barely even noticed her. In fact, everyone in my class thought she was someone with a very weak quirk since she barely used it. But then that villain showed up and things about her seemed different, and despite how close we've been getting, I still get the feeling Tatsumaki is hiding some part of her from me. I came to realize that on the day we left UA's entrance exam. I thought of Tatsumaki in a flash. The girl had given him a look that was different from the ones he had usually received. It was the picture of the girl smiling that night with a look that was different from anything she had ever displayed. Fubuki remarked, "I see, so it's not only me." She didn't know exactly what Izuku had witnessed that night. In any case, she went on. "There is one thing you can get her, but I don't think it would be easy." She responded, "My sister needs a friend. She needs someone that she can be certain will be there for her. The reason I say this is because I think she's too secure of herself and me, and so that has made her become isolated of others. But, if someone like you can show her that she shouldn't be so secured of herself, that she can actually rely on someone other than her own, then I believe she'll be more open to herself and others." Izuku said, "I think I get it." Then he stood up with a confident smile. "I don't know how, but I have a feeling that I'm one step closer. Thank you, Fubuki." Fubuki returned the smile and said, "You're welcome." According to Izuku, "By the way, how did you get Tatsumaki to leave?" Fubuki grinned chirpily and said, "I told her I forget a bag at school." Izuku stopped, shifting his gaze to the side of the room. He sensed something wasn't right, but he wasn't sure why. He looked back at Fubuki after finding a small school bag by the wall with little effort. He said, "But, your backpack is here." Fubuki laughed and said, "I never said it was mine." Evening. 8:30 p.m. night had replaced the day, and time was once again encroaching on human existence. Though not as many as during the day, there were still people moving around. Tatsumaki, however, was carrying her school bag while strolling along the sidewalk with a displeased expression on her face. Tatsumaki exclaimed, "Fubuki is so going to get it now," she just went on, unconcerned by the people who were staring at her and leaving. "Just you wait, Fubuki. First, I'll strip you of your manga collection and then I'll—" Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki stopped moving. She was certain of the identity of that voice. She wasn't in the right frame of mind to speak, though, even as she turned and saw Izuku sprinting in her direction. Tatsumaki said, "What do you want, Midoriya? If you haven't noticed, I'm not in a good..." "Here!" exclaimed Izuku. Tatsumaki was perplexed. Now that Izuku was in front of her, he stood differently. Additionally, he was bowing his upper body toward her and holding his two hands together. As if that weren't enough, Tatsumaki happened to notice something in his hand and had to take it from the teenager. She questioned, "What's this stupid thing for?" Clearly a keychain. The object in her hand featured a green, inanimate butterfly with black dots on its wings. But Tatsumaki was not impressed. "I swear, Midoriya, you keep coming up with dumb things sometimes that it can really piss me." She was interrupted by Izuku. But rather than using words, the adolescent boy produced a replica of that keychain and held it over her face. His butterfly, however, was a little different because its wings were speckled with white rather than black. Izuku stated plainly, "This is a keychain, but it's more than just that. Now I know we're not friends. You have things you want to keep to yourself, and that's okay. But I just want you to know that if you need anything, you can rely on me to help you out. I don't care if it's big or too small. I just want you to know that I'm very grateful to you. So, as a show of it, these keychains, let them be a reminder of my promise to you." Tatsumaki was shocked and surprised. She had known Izuku for several months and had always considered him to be a bit of a nervous wreck. However, the teenager was being so direct with her without worrying about how she would react. The girl's anger began to subside at that precise moment, but before she could respond, Izuku turned away and fled, not before grinning and waving back at her. He yelled, "Good night, Tatsumaki, see you soon." Tatsumaki did not respond. As she watched Izuku flee until she was unable to see him again, she felt as though she was stuck in time. Even so, she felt the keychain in her hand as she moved it, and she involuntarily lifted it to her face. She thought, "This is just a dumb thing. However, this is the first time I've ever gotten anything from someone." Abruptly, a tear fell down the Esper's cheek. Before wiping the tear's trail with her other hand, it took her by surprise. She pondered, what the hell was that? Such sentiments of gratitude were unknown to the Esper. This was because of her past, which had shaped who she was today. Even so, she experienced a positive feeling, particularly as she eyed the object and turned to leave. "Anyway, I should probably throw this away," she replied. She kept eyeing the object and moving on, but it was a stubborn thought. "But won't it be a waste? I mean, It's not like I care about what Midoriya said. But when I look at it, it does look very nice. Tatsumaki finally made up his mind. With a dreamy expression on her face, she stuffed the object into her coat's side pocket and ducked her hands inside. With a smile, Tatsumaki muttered, "Weird, I don't feel mad anymore." The girl then carried on walking. Though she was unaware of it at the time, she was experiencing gratitude, which she would eventually be able to comprehend on a common level. Izuku thought that surprisingly went well. He continued to run as he expressed his idea. I was almost nervous there, so I ran off before I could fidget in front of her. Hopefully, she actually accepted it. This really feels go. Izuku ran into someone out of the blue. However, he was surprised by it, in part because he was thrown to the ground on his butt. Ow, that was sudden. Izuku mumbled painfully. You okay, kid? Izuku looked up and said, huh? At that moment, he saw a hand being held out to him, which he accepted. It was the person who got him back on his feet. Thank you, mister. I'm really sorry. The man said, don't overthink it, kid. Mistakes happen, but don't call me mister. That reminds me of an old geezer I know. So call me by my birth name. Oh, what's that? She inquired, Izuku. The man confused him a little, but not enough to make him suspect anything. The man smiled. Give me a call, Garo. Izuku had nothing to say. It's not that he couldn't. It's just that when he heard that name, his heart skipped a beat. In fact, now that he heard that name and looked at the young man again, he appeared to be someone else than he had been a few seconds before. Izuku could tell the man was in his 20s, but he was frighteningly muscular, wearing loose-fitting white pants and a skin-tight black shirt that showed off his abs and arm muscles. His other features were two long, spiky blondes that could give him the devil himself, and red eyes that looked thirsty at Izuku. Izuku was unable to ignore this uneasy feeling, but he managed to move around Garo, smiling nervously at him before turning to leave. Well, I apologize for bothering you. Goodbye, he uttered those words. Goodbye. Garo smiled menacingly. Naturally, Izuku didn't stay to witness that smile. He had already fled before the man, Garo, could reply, so it was just the young man who kept his eyes on Izuku's running figure with a curious expression. Garo said, for a kid, he sure has gotten my interest. The hero hunter had the device at his ear, just in time to hear a familiar woman's voice, but it was annoying that Garo's phone rang at that moment, requiring him to turn away from the child in order to answer it. Well, I take it you've done it, the woman said. Yeah, I was able to sneak into the kid's home without his mom knowing, so I got to see his UA test result, Garo said, a little disappointed, before turning to leave. And Garo grinned instantly. You were correct. That boy and All Might are linked. As you predicted, that boy has one for all. Just by holding his hand, I could sense the tremendous energy emanating from that peculiarity. I got excited about it. The woman on the other end burst out laughing. I knew you would find him interesting, she continued. After all, you were one of Oxform Lab's finest. With malice, Garo said, don't bring that shit up. I still haven't forgiven you assholes for that back then. You're fortunate, though, because I've discovered a new victim. So, will you discuss this with All for One? No, this information is between you and me, the woman said. However, I might be able to use this information to negotiate with him for something beneficial in the future. All right. Whatever the case, keep this in mind, Garo said. That child. My new target is Izuku Midoriya. And when he graduates, I want him to be ready for hunting. Garo ended the call, clearly not caring what the other person thought, and instead smiled maniacally while his eyes were glowing red and gazing at the half-covered moon. Garo sarcastically remarked, Izuku Midoriya, I'll keep that name in mind. He's just a kid now, but I can tell he'll become a great hero. He'll be the perfect prey when that time comes. A prey must, after all, be given some time to spread its wings before being pursued. He disconnected from me. I can't say that I'm not surprised, huh? Then came a sigh. The woman's location seemed to be an expensive apartment, so when she was visible, sitting at a table, she looked like a normal person. She was slender, with emerald green eyes and aqua blue wavy hair that hung past her shoulders. She was also wearing a reddish-brown skirt and a tank top that exposed her cleavage beneath an open lab coat. She dropped her phone and then picked up a paper from a stack of other papers and started to look through them. She remarked, teaching can be really frustrating, but in the end, it will all be worthwhile. Everything is proceeding as planned, and most importantly, I get to closely monitor the sister of my previous experiment. She glanced at the name of the paper she was holding at that moment. It was an unmarked test script, but it did contain the name of a certain 9-year-old girl. You're doing just fine, Class Representative Fubuki, she laughed. Dr. Psychosa's name, human, Esper, race. Working as a teacher in a mixed-gender rosary school. Alias. Unknown. OXFORM Labs, Monster Association affiliation. There was a feeling of tranquility somewhere in China's Himalayas. In case you were unaware, the Himalayas are a type of mountain range in Asia that spans 5 nations, including China. Therefore, even though it was quiet, there was a sleeping monster in that area, and its eyes suddenly opened, waking it up. There was a loud boom shortly after. The monster had been sleeping in frozen block on one of the coldest mountainsides for more than 1,000 years. But now that he was walking down the mountain, shaking it with every step, the creature was free. He was a massive, loosely humanoid creature with a reptilian tail, scales, horns, and claws, among other animalistic features. After being frozen for thousands of years, the creature had finally escaped. Since there was nothing to stop it, the enormous monster started to descend one of the mountains while flaunting his appearance for everyone to see. He was in human filth. I have long awaited this day, exclaimed the monster. With the Subterrane King dead and the Deep Sea King in a state of silence, the Terra Lizard clan shall at last claim ownership of the earth. That appeared to be the case based on appearance. Its build was obviously something not to be undervalued, and its size was terrifyingly enormous. However, in spite of his appearance, he turned after a missile struck him in the face. It attracted the monster's attention, but it did no harm. The monster saw what was waiting for him as a result. 4 missiles, probably for him, were lined up on the ground. As a result, despite the fact that he did not move, they all shot from the ground and came directly at him, striking specific areas of his body. He was unaffected by it, though, and kept moving in their direction. The monster had no idea that he was being watched. The monster passed a military communication vehicle concealed by the forest. They were therefore able to monitor his whereabouts at that precise moment. Now leading target to Point Bravo, a military official said over the radio. Soon after, a plane was spotted gliding through the sky. It was a military aircraft with a Chinese base that was en route to the monster's location. A middle-aged Chinese man wearing a blue winter coat and green winter pants was behind the pilot in the cockpit, who was guiding the aircraft in a specific direction. He wore an earpiece and was facing away from the pilot, toward a group of computer screens. "Roger," said the man. "We are inbound and on schedule. We'll be on top of Bravo very soon." After that, the flight proceeded. The military was prepared to push the monster in the direction of Point Bravo. Meanwhile, a silent figure stood by himself in the plane's cargo area. Mostly due to the large winter coat covering his body, he was invisible. As a result, his face was hidden even when the floor beneath his feet opened. But when he started to fall to the ground, everything changed. At last, the enigmatic individual was exposed. The wind was so harsh that his winter coat blew off him. Then it became clear that the enigmatic figure was Saitama, still on his way to the ground in his hero costume. The man, of course, seemed unconcerned. He simply had a stoic expression on his face until he turned serious and moved toward the monster. However, the monster was not struck by the pro-hero. He had the option, but instead he flew straight past the monster and landed a few feet away on the ground in front of it. Naturally, this attracted the monster's attention, as he halted, glanced down at him, and saw the hero standing stoically in front of him. Saitama was unsurprised by its size, so the hero spoke at that point. "Oh, so you must be the guy that I was called to stop," he replied. The beast gave a low growl. He inquired, "And who might you be?" "Me? I'm Saitama, a hero for..." Abruptly, Saitama's phone rang. Although it was unexpected, the pro-hero didn't seem to mind. So he took out his phone and turned back to the monster, still wearing that same stoic expression. Saitama stated bluntly, "Hey, I have to take this. Hold on a bit." The creature was taken aback. He was shocked by how composed the man in front of him was in spite of his enormous size. This was to be expected, of course, from Saitama, who took the call and held it to his ear. Saitama called out to the caller, "Hey, All Might. What's up? Oh, you've gotten into UA? That is nice. I'm guessing the kid knows about this. Oh okay. Me? I'm just about to fight this lizard monster." "Lizard?" railed the monster. "I am no mere lizard. I am the ancient king, a ruler of the..." Saitama told the caller, "Hold on." Then he faced the monster. "Sorry, but can you keep it down a bit? I'm talking to someone. It's kind of rude to interrupt someone, you know." "Rude?" screamed the monster. "Listen, human filth. I am a being beyond your comprehension. I am a force that..." Saitama replied, "Yeah, sure. You can go on now." It wasn't at the Ancient King, though. Rather, he was speaking on the phone once more. "Oh, you want Genos to do what? I see, then I guess I could." When Saitama saw something strange, he stopped. The monster's face had entered his personal space and was now very near to the hero. Saitama, however, was unsurprisingly unfrightened, particularly when he faced the monster once more. He asked, "Do you mind?" The monster simply huffs cold air at Saitama through its nostrils in response. But this didn't stop the pro-hero from looking bored. Saitama turned away and carried on calling as if the monster hadn't even been there. "What was I saying? Oh yes, I remember," the Ancient King said, acting brave. "We'll see how much that will last, you hairless human," and straightened up instantly. "What?" Saitama grew irate. Suddenly, he turned to the monster, comically angry, forgetting his call with all might. "Hey, who you calling hairless?" The Ancient King had no desire to respond. Rather, he lifted his foot and landed it on the hero, but because of Saitama's moment, he accidentally punched the monster's foot, destroying its body and causing blood and body parts to fly everywhere. "Oh," mumbled Saitama. His expression had returned to its stoicism, but his fist was smoking now. He was also starting to comprehend what had just transpired. His right eye twitched, and so it came to him. "Wait, that can't be it." All Might called out, "Hey, Saitama, you there?" The phone was brought to his ear by Saitama. "I'm going to have to call you back," he replied. He then hung up the phone and collapsed to his knees. Not again. All it took was one punch. Dammittt. The mountain reverberated with the hero's cry. Of course, the majority of the military was perplexed by Saitama's response, even though they recognized the Ancient King's death as a victory. Fortunately, Genos, standing atop a plane now en route to Saitama, understood. "I see," Genos thought perceptively. This monster could not give the fight Master wanted. "Master, don't worry. I'll always be by your side." The results of the UA examination were displayed in the same dimly lit room where some officials had assembled. The names of the examinees who made it to the board, along with their villain and rescue scores, were visible to some people here. An official declared, "The results of the practical skills entrance examinations are here." She went on from there. "It is amazing though. At first it appeared Tatsumaki was the #1 place, but she was overcome by Midoriya Izuku, who, by rushing at the first and second points villain bots, was able to destroy them with single punches before they could react. This kid is as tough as they get. His future is going to be bright if he keeps it up." Another official exclaimed, "And then there's Tatsumaki. Though she was the original first, her quirk was remarkable. She was able to use both long range and close combat to terminate every villain bot she came across. But like Bakugo, she had 0 rescue points. She did earn 4 extra points for saving Izuku from falling. However, there is no excuse at the fact that both she and Bakugo are formidable in their own ways. Tatsumaki is second and Bakugo is third place. No doubt, these two may clash with one another if given the chance." Stated differently, nearly everyone in the room was impressed. One individual, though, was not impressed. Aizawa Shota, also known as Eraserhead, was there, and in contrast to the others, he simply leaned back on a wall and looked bored. With a bored expression, he thought, "Geez, what a din." However, she managed to reach Ua. Let me see if I can make that change." 8:00 p.m. the night after the notice letter was opened. "All might," exclaimed Izuku. When he did this, tears welled up. But all Izuku did was surprise All Might. The pro-hero was in his skinny form at the moment, so hearing his hero name startled him and made his teeth bleed. The fact that a nearby couple had overheard them didn't help either. The woman exclaimed, "Did someone say, All Might? Where?" All Might looked at Izuku in a moment. "Quick, kid. Tell him you mistook me for someone else." "I thought he was someone else," Izuku yelled rapidly. The couple calmed down after that. Izuku sighed, relieved by this development, but he couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. "With Saitama, I sort of did this," Izuku thought. "I should exercise more caution." They were at the park by the sea for the time being. This was the same location where Izuku had cleaned up the site and where he had started training with All Might. Therefore, even though he succeeded in his mission, the location had gained popularity as a place to hang out because it had been, mysteriously, cleaned. But the two of them were not there for that reason. All Might turned calmly to the boy and said something. "According to the pro-hero, congrats on passing. He then gave the teenager a pat on the head after his action. Just so you know, I didn't inform the academy about our point of contact. You're the type who'd worry that you got accepted solely by connections. Thank you for keeping me in mind, Izuku grinned. Knowing that his trainer and icon were pleased with his development made him very happy. Therefore, he was content even after All Might took his hand off his head. I was surprised to hear that you've been made a teacher at UA. That's why we need to meet here, I get it. But isn't your office located at Roppongi, Minato Ward, Tokyo, 6 to 12? Stop right there, said All Might audaciously. Izuku paused and saw that something wasn't quite right. As he became aware of All Might's shift in attitude, the upbeat atmosphere around him seemed to be coming to an end. All Might spoke then, looking out to sea with his hair blowing blissfully against the wind, so he didn't have to question it. Anyway, I told the academy about my predicament, but haven't breathed a word about it to anyone else. The pro hero replied. I have UA notify me on the chance that they found me a suitable successor. In realization, Izuku thought, that's right. As he went on, his attitude also changed. He did say he'd been looking for a successor for a long time, he said, looking up at his hands and thinking more deeply. It appears that he intended to select a student. It's full of talented individuals with amazing eccentricities. The teenager quickly reached a decision. However, he didn't seem to like it and wasn't pleased about it. Nevertheless, he said it. One for all, I was able to use some of its power to beat the villain bots, but just one serious punch or kick is all it takes to wreck my body. So really, I can't handle its full potential. All Might said, that can't be helped, before turning back to face the teenager. If you tried to get a guy who suddenly sprouted a tail to do tricks with it, he wouldn't know how to control it. It's properly enough to do so. It's the same story here. Huh, Izuku uttered. Then his eyes got big. So you mean to say you saw all that coming? With a hint of nervousness, All Might said, well, there's just been no time, but everything worked out all right, he went on, or I should say All Might. Izuku did not find it funny. Luckily, All Might was able to calm down while he picked up 2 cans off the floor. All Might remarked, I'll admit, I was surprised by how far you went. My workout plan, aimed to pass. The American dream, was meant to bring you so far. But by adding Saitama's training, you were able to exceed even my expectations. Let me explain why. Izuku listened without saying anything. This time, as always, he appreciated what All Might had to say, and so the pro hero went on. Because of your dedication to Saitama and my workout plan, you've gained a few steps closer to becoming a steady vessel. He concluded. But make no mistake. You are stuck at all or a few shots. But you can learn to control the power level to your advantage and save your body the strain of a full-strength power emission. In other words, the more you build up the vessel, the more you can control the power within. Subsequently, the pro hero transformed into his muscular superhero form. After saying this, he crushed the cans in his hand. Like this. All Might thought, the transferred flame is still small, like unto the sacred fire of lore. But going forward, not even heavy rain will stop it from growing. The woman in the couple exclaimed, wait, isn't that, it is. That's All Might. How did he get here? All Might was startled at once. He wasn't overly concerned about it, of course, but that didn't stop him from running with Izuku at his heels. And my duty will be fulfilled when my flame gradually dims and finally goes out. All Might came to an end. The end of one chapter had been marked by the beginning of another. Izuku had been dreaming of being in UA for a long time, and now he had finally realized his dream. Spring, then, was in the air. Izuku was currently getting ready to depart, but since he was now wearing the official UA uniform, he was rushing. However, there was a minor issue that, when considered, wasn't that big of a problem. His mother would constantly call out to him to remind him if he had brought any particular items with him. Izuku, of course, was a little embarrassed. He was being treated like a child by his mother. But just as he was ready to leave, she called out to him once more, causing him to turn to her and whine in embarrassment. What? His mother said nothing. She was deeply pleased for her son. Her son's dream of attending UA had long since been abandoned. She was therefore overjoyed to see him standing there, wearing UA's official uniform, and ready to embark on a heroic future. She grinned, you're really awesome right now. With a smile of his own, Izuku opened the door. He replied, see you soon, Mum. The teenager then embarked on his future. Nothing was really stopping him from achieving his goals. The teenager was about to leave after shutting the door behind him when he was taken by surprise. Tatsumaki was sitting on the railings, and he gave him a brief glare. She wore the female version of the UA uniform, just like him. She said sharply, you take too long to prepare, you know. Tatsumaki, exclaimed Izuku, startled. The sight of the teenage girl in front of him, particularly in front of his house, startled him. What are you doing here? How did you know my house? Tatsumaki answered, stupid, don't try to change the subject. Izuku thought, I'm not trying to change the subject. At that moment, the teenager experienced a familiar feeling. It was the sensation of being gently lifted off the ground. However, the teenager was accustomed to it by this time and didn't mind. As a result, Izuku and Tatsumaki both found themselves floating a few feet above the ground. Tatsumaki said, let's go. We'll be late, mummy's boy, and turned. Izuku flushed instantly with shame. Tatsumaki was the first girl to truly arrive at his house, and even though she hasn't entered yet, the fact that she passed him and his mother was enough to embarrass him. But Tatsumaki seemed unconcerned. She simply took the teenage boy and herself on a plane. But after that, she couldn't help but think about it. Hey, Midoriya. I want to ask you something, she replied. Izuku gave her a perplexed look as he looked up. She wasn't acting stern or cold toward him as she usually does. At the time she spoke, he was at her right side, exactly at her waist. Do you have that stupid keychain with you? She inquired. Yeah, it's over here. Izuku mentioned it. He then showed it to the girl, who turned away upon seeing it. She muttered, idiot, I never said you should show me. Sorry. Izuku expressed regret. The teenager was on the verge of putting his back in his pocket when he decided against it. It was because he had looked and seen a familiar keychain hanging by the side of Tatsumaki's bag. So he gazed upon it. He thought, that's the keychain I gave to Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki had now perplexed Izuku. Without a word, he managed to carefully replace his keychain in his pocket. However, he was shocked by what he saw when he looked up at the teenage girl. Tatsumaki seemed to be brilliant as he flew into the air. The sunlight seemed to just make her face sparkle a little, and she had a warm, bright smile on her face. Tatsumaki, he whispered. He was really feeling something for Tatsumaki. He simply was unaware of it. One thing was unknown to the teenagers back at Izuku's house. As she opened the door, Izuku's mother caught a glimpse of her and Tatsumaki taking off. But instead of looking shocked, she simply gave a kind smile and shut the door almost right away. The two of them arrived at UA's main building after a while, but there wasn't time to stroll through the corridor in a composed manner as one might anticipate. Izuku and Tatsumaki were both late, and as a result, they were unsure of the precise location of their class. Tatsumaki screamed, This is your fault, Midoriya. She wasn't sure if she should use her quirk in the building, so she was running alongside the teenage boy. Why do you have to suck up to your mom so much? I'm sorry, Tatsumaki, please keep it down, this place is so big, Izuku persisted. I know that, dummy, exclaimed Tatsumaki. So they ran on. Luckily, the number 1 on the door helped them locate the correct classroom. By this time, it was well known that less than 1 in 300 examinees qualified for the academy each year. As a result, only 38 children were sent to one of the 2 classes after being divided by 18. Tatsumaki remarked, so this is it. Izuku went on, yeah, the door is humongous. The boy with the green hair then proceeded to the door. Tatsumaki stood there at the same moment, turning on her quirk briefly before turning it off. Naturally, though, Izuku was unaware of her action because he was staring at the door with his back to the Esper. As a result, as he reached for the doorknob, he started to feel anxious. Izuku whispered, we'll be with the selected few who passed the test. Tatsumaki answered, you got to relax, you know. Standing close, she could sense Izuku's nervousness. She took his arm toward the door by the wrist before he turned the knob, and she gave him a little stern look. Listen, this isn't middle school. Those classmates of ours back there won't be at your neck anymore. If you really want to be a hero, you have to stop being nervous and scared. Understood? Izuku was taken aback. Tatsumaki's intense gaze on him caught his attention as he looked at her for a while. But instead of speaking, he simply blushed a little and turned his head away from the wrist Tatsumaki was still holding. He replied, yeah, understood. Tatsumaki said, good. Then she opened the door after taking his hand off the doorknob. I hope you can keep to that because those 2 are here too. Izuku exclaimed, perplexed. Tatsumaki gestured toward a particular spot. Izuku could see where she was pointing because the door was open. But when he saw 2 people he most definitely didn't want to meet, his heart nearly fell. They were Ida and Katsuki, respectively. Just my luck, he mused despairingly. Then, however, he turned to Tatsumaki, looking perplexed. He recalled, but wait, how did you? Oh right. Fubuki mentioned Tatsumaki could sense anyone's essence. I guess that means she can notice someone's presence too, he pondered. Izuku and Tatsumaki then watched the two. They saw Katsuki sitting properly at his desk, with his feet resting on it. Iida was trying to tell the teenager to put his legs down because it was disrespectful, but it was obvious that this didn't sit well with him. Katsuki, of course, would not listen. He continued to be direct and arrogant as usual when he made comments about Iida. He even threatened to deal with him because he was a elite, because he went to a renowned private middle school, as if that weren't enough. In any case, it didn't seem to matter. Iida went straight over to Izuku and Tatsumaki after spotting them. Tatsumaki, however, moved forward and extended her arm in front of Izuku to block the taller teenager before he could approach. A stern Tatsumaki remarked, "Not so fast, 4 eyes." Her eyes gazed at the taller teen with a hint of malice as she went on, clearly prepared to face him. "If you think for a second that I would let you berate him again because of your misjudging ass, then you must be asking for a good." Iida interrupted, saying, "Let me through." Although he disapproved of Tatsumaki's behavior, he didn't appear to be angry with her. "I am Iida Tenya from Some." Tatsumaki shouted, "We heard you before," in reference to Iida introducing himself to Katsuki. "So what if you came from a top private school? Do you think coming from a place like that would make you be better than us? I don't care. You can be the Prime Minister's son and I still won't let you touch Midoriya." Surprised, Izuku said, "Tatsumaki." He fixed his gaze on Tatsumaki, who was displaying yet another aspect of herself. Although she had previously saved him, this protective side of her outweighed the need to save someone she had long denied. However, Iida's disapproval of the girl's attitude was evident from the expression on his face. Thankfully, he was able to control his emotions because his upbringing had taken over. Calmly, Iida said, "Now I understand. The fact that you're protecting him proves that I was on the wrong about him and you. But I can assure you that I hold no ill will towards him now. If you want you can stay and listen to what I have to say." Tatsumaki stopped and faced Izuku once more. The teenager was looking back at her, but his face was bewildered. However, until she turned back to Iida, this moment was a little more for Tatsumaki than one might have anticipated. With a wave of her hand, Tatsumaki exclaimed, "HMPH, go ahead." The girl retreated for some reason, but then she approached Iida and inquired, "Hey, how good's your knee?" "My knee?" Iida inquired, perplexed. "Why would you ask about my knee? It is in good." He stopped when Tatsumaki said, "Good enough for me." She then kicked him squarely in the knee. "Ow!" Iida cried out in agony. Tatsumaki seemed unconcerned in reply. She ignored the taller teen's support from his other leg while he clutched his knee in his hands. After saying that, she started to move toward an open desk. "Don't be a prick to anyone next time and maybe I won't do it again." "That girl," Iida uttered outragedly. Sorry about that." Izuku expressed regret. The taller teen didn't make him feel as nervous and afraid as he should have. As he went on, he actually felt a little more at ease. Tatsumaki can be like that, but she really means well when you get to know her. Iida answered, "I see," but he gave Tatsumaki one last glare. "Thank you, Tatsumaki," Izuku pondered. He watched the girl leave with a warm smile on his face. "Even though you won't acknowledge it, I know you did that merely to put me at ease in his presence. It seems like you're opening up a little." "Anyway," Iida mentioned. He turned back to Izuku and continued, his other leg back on the ground. "Midoriya, inasmuch as your friend can be intolerable, I must hand it to the both of you. You both divided the actual nature of the practical skills exam, didn't you?" Izuku did not respond. Part of the reason was that Iida persisted despite the obvious fact that he wasn't entirely comfortable with this. "I was blind to it, and I completely misread you. I hate to admit it, but she was right about me then. I misjudged you. You were clearly the better man." "However, did I also not know about the exam?" Izuku pondered sheepishly. Katsuki mumbled angrily. Deku, seeing his childhood friend made the teenage blonde very unhappy. He actually harbored a great deal of animosity simply because he saw him there. However, when she set her school bag on the desk beside him, he noticed someone. "This desk seems good enough, and it's unoccupied," she replied. "Tatsumaki!" exclaimed Katsuki. The green-haired Esper was, in fact, the one who was going to sit beside him. But as she sat there, facing him, she was taken aback by it. Tatsumaki yelled, "What? Oh great! It's you!" violently. "I was looking around for a free seat and failed to pay attention to your ugly scowl." Katsuki shouted back, "Who you calling ugly, windblower?" You, flame brain! Exclaimed Tatsumaki. Katsuki snarled, and Tatsumaki did the same. It was obvious that they both hated the other person. But despite the temptation, neither of them applied their quirk to the other. They simply turned away while huffing at the same time. HMPH. Tatsumaki abruptly said, "Anyway, I guess I'll just stay here." Katsuki was obviously taken aback by this, and she went on. "For one, getting up and looking for another seat feels unneeded. And then there's the fact that Midoriya would probably make the dumb choice of sitting next to you again. Honestly, that guy can be such an idiot." Katsuki remained silent. Although he didn't want to acknowledge it, he also didn't want to sit next to his friend from childhood. Even so, he continued to frown at Tatsumaki before turning back to face Izuku, who was now speaking to Oako. Retrograde in particular, Izuku and Katsuki were at one of their teacher's desks in the teacher's quarters. Speaking to them there, the teacher was beaming. "This means that 3 kids from our middle school got into UA," he continued. "Midoriya's acceptance in particular is a miracle among miracles. And to think Tatsumaki was that talented was beyond any teacher's expectation. I was hoping to see her again, but it seems she doesn't want to be here. Oh well." Katsuki spoke to Izuku a few minutes later, but not in a pleasant or cordial manner. Rather, Izuku was pressed up against the wall in a deserted area of the middle school while the blonde teen angrily tightened his fist on the green-haired teen's shirt. Katsuki screamed angrily, "What dirty goddamn trick did you use to pass the exam, shitheel? First, you score higher points than me and Tatsumaki. And now you ruin my future glory of being the first to enter UA from here. Me alone. You fucking ruined it for me. And not only that, you shredded what should be mine and pissed all over it before then shitting on it." Izuku's constant references to being a hero had been annoying to Katsuki for months. But this was not like that. In addition to passing into UA, Izuku outscored him by a significant margin of points, something that most children could only imagine. It infuriated him greatly. Katsuki shouted louder, "I told you to go someplace else, fuck munchkin." Katsuki was expecting Izuku to writhe in his presence by now. To his astonishment, though, the teenager seized his wrist and tightened around it so forcefully that Katsuki found it painful to release him. Naturally, Katsuki was taken aback, and Midoriya fell to his knees on the ground. "What the devil?" Katsuki pondered. Confused and angry, he gripped the teenager and rubbed his wrist. How on earth did he get that strength? Izuku said firmly, "Some people finally acknowledge me." Katsuki was somewhat taken aback by his action there for one reason. In fact, Izuku was figuratively and literally opposing him. "They told me I could become a hero. Kachan, I've won the right." Izuku then spoke with teary eyes that were full of resolve. "Why, you can't stop me, I'm headed to UA." That pitiful rat really fought back, Katsuki thought vehemently. There must be a flip side to this, and that grip back there. In any case, Oako was chatting cheerfully with Izuku back at Izuku, who was blushing profusely. This was probably due to Ochako's close proximity and enthusiastic smile. "Oh, where's Tatsumaki? I hope she's alright. She looked alright when she helped you out," she kept saying. "Hey, do you think I can meet her again? I wonder if that'll be possible when we have the ceremony? But then again, it could be guidance counselor stuff. Oh, and the teacher, what'll they be like? I'm so anxious, like wow." Then there was a voice. But it was done by a man in a sleeping bag, not by the students. The fact that he was wearing a sleeping bag like a cocoon and was lying on the ground in it added to the strangeness. With a bored tone, he said, "If you're going to be hunting for buddies, do it elsewhere." Izuku and Oako were both taken aback by his appearance and turned back to stare at him with wide eyes. If his appearance wasn't sufficient, he held a pamphlet in his hand through the sleeping bag's only opening, which was his face. So he sucked it to his mouth after saying, "This is the Department of Heroics." The class instantly fell silent. Tatsumaki was no exception, feeling as though she had previously sensed the man's presence. Nobody was aware of the man's identity or purpose. The man then stood up, unzipped the sleeping bag, came out, and entered the classroom. Oako and Izuku had both gone to their desks by now. With a bored tone, he remarked, "It took you lot 8 seconds to quiet down. Life is short, kids, you're lacking in common sense." Tatsumaki let out a low growl. Like everyone else, she was standing, but she was upset to see the man. Why? She knew who he was, that's why. He was Aizawa Shota, also known as Eraserhead, who a few months prior had accompanied the UA principal regarding her debt. Angrily, Tatsumaki exclaimed, "It's him. It had to be him out of everyone I could meet. There is no way this could get worse." In any case, Izuku and other pupils had already surmised that he was their teacher, or sensei in Japanese. However, they were somewhat taken aback that nobody had heard of him, even though he might have been a pro hero. In any case, Aizawa went on. He said dryly, "I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shota. Pleasure meeting you." "Our teacher for homeroom." Everyone was taken aback. "Anyway," added Aizawa. He turned to the door and said, "I would like to introduce my assistant before we get down to important matters. Hey, you can come and introduce yourself." Someone outside the classroom replied, "Right." The voice was one thing that stood out at the time. At the same time, it sounded robotic and firm. However, no one inquired about it. The reason was that the individual who had responded then abruptly shocked Tatsumaki and everyone else by entering the classroom and standing next to Aizawa. Firmly, the young man said, "My name is Genos. It is a pleasure meeting you all." "Wow, is he a robot?" muttered one individual. Someone else whispered, "That's so cool." Another whispered, "Ua really is sophisticated that way, huh?" Tatsumaki was therefore not as perplexed and astounded as everyone else was by Genos. Before she could process it, her thoughts reverted to the moment she had first seen the cyborg. However, Aizawa's presence and Genos' survival started to arouse feelings in her that no one else could see. Anyway, Aizawa resumed her speech. "This is Genos. He's a cyborg and here to assist me on some stuff. Treat him well," he replied. Tatsumaki finally lost it after that. She was no longer able to contain herself. "An assistant? Ho, how the hell are you even alive?" she screamed. Suddenly, Tatsumaki had an idea. All eyes were on her after she screamed out her thoughts. When this occurred, it was both upsetting and embarrassing. To everyone's surprise, however, the girl fled the classroom right away because she had never encountered this before. Izuku yelled, "Tatsumaki, wait," but he was not heard. But Aizawa seemed unconcerned. He was just staring at the entrance with that casual look on his face. He remarked, "Well, that was annoying." Genos said nothing. After a few moments of that silence, he made the decision to leave. "I will get her back. Please continue with your lesson, sensei," he replied. In response, Aizawa said, "All right." Tatsumaki let out an angry curse. Damn it. Damn it. She was standing by the see-through windows of a hallway, her head down and her fists clenched. "First, I have that damn debt and now those two are the ones to teach me. Why the hell does shit have to?" A recognizable voice interrupted, "There you are." Tatsumaki reacted instantly. She turned to the source of the voice and used her quirk. There, it was discovered to be Genos. The warning from Tatsumaki was, "Hold it right there, one move and I swear I'll end you this time. Tell me why you're here. Are you here to screw my life, metal jackass? Clearly, you didn't learn from last time that." "I'm sorry," Genos said. He sounded earnest before bowing to Tatsumaki, which startled her. "I was wrong to misjudge and battle you," he replied. "My perspective of you at the time was wrong. Before the incident concerning Oxform Lab, I had held the idea that you were a threat. That was what you were brought up to become. But thanks to a great man who saved me that night you left me, I have come to realize that I should not judge you in a bad manner. Please, I ask for your forgiveness." TCH, Tatsumaki curtly clicked her tongue. She wasn't sure if his statements were sincere or ruse. However, she glanced around before turning back to face him. "So who's this great man?" Genos hesitated and said, "I cannot say. Is he from Oxform Labs?" "He's certainly not. He is a pro hero." Tatsumaki paused and mumbled, "I see." She chose to switch off her quirk, but she remained wary of the cyborg. HMPH, whatever. Genos said, "Understood." Then, with a thought in his head, he straightened up again. "As much as I would like to tell her about him, Master Saitama told me not to." Despite having lived next door to him for 2 years and her younger sister being aware of his hero status, she seems to be ignorant of it. Strange. Straightforwardly, Tatsumaki stated, "By the way, I'm not forgiving you. You not only threatened me but you indirectly threatened my sister. That's something I can't get over. But it would be a pain to destroy you here, so I'll leave you for now. But just know this, try anything funny and I'll make sure I eliminate you." Genos said, "Understood." HMPH, Tatsumaki then started to move away. She didn't look at the cyborg as she walked past him. But Genos was still watching her and wanted to say something. Genos stated, "I am aware of Child Emperor." Tatsumaki halted but did not look at him in response. "He knows of my existence and believes I can be of use. But besides coming here to apologize, I have another reason for meeting you." "Oh, and what's that?" inquired Tatsumaki. Genos replied, Garo, he has returned. Tatsumaki was taken aback at once. Her expression conveyed it even though she didn't say it. But Genos was unmoved, and he started to move past her. He went on to say, Be careful, Tatsumaki. Reports have confirmed heroes being hunted down by a mysterious man. It is possible that he is the cause. Anyway, your class will be at the sports grounds. I advise you catch up as soon as you can. Genos departed with that. But Tatsumaki stayed put and remained silent. This occurred because she didn't consider leaving because she was lost in thought. However, after Genos left, she turned her attention to the outside world, specifically the skies. She whispered, Garo, it has been so long, huh? Retrospective. 4 years prior, please, I don't want to fight anymore. A young girl was in a large white room. This young girl wore a black skin-tight suit and had curly green hair. She appeared to be 8 years old, but her job wasn't good. A huge creature with a broad smile on his face had its foot on top of her body. He sarcastically remarked, Weak, you're so weak. Continue to beg for me. I love hearing the creatures of you humans so much. The girl cried and said, Let me go, she went on, tears streaming down her cheeks this time. Please, I don't want this. I want to go home. I want my adoptive parents back. I want to see my sister. So please, let me go. All Might. Anyone, any hero, please, save me. The monster chuckled, and so did everyone else who was observing. Like him, they were all monstrous, frightening-looking creatures. The creature himself was around 12 feet tall, with a black, hairy upper body, 4 enormous arms, and spiky hair. He was dressed in brown, tattered pants. In any case, the laughter went on. The monsters were unmoved to assist the girl and showed no concern for her plight. They simply continued to laugh as she sobbed bitterly until her tears, which seemed to go on forever, touched the ground. But when he approached the monster, everything changed. Get off the girl. I've seen enough. The monster looked at the voice and said, Huh? Following that, the room fell silent. Before that voice arrived, the people who were standing there had had enough of laughing. As a result, everyone's attention was focused on the lone human, aside from Tatsumaki, who was approaching the 4-armed monster fearlessly. As that, one monster asked. Another monster uttered the words, Yes, it is. According to another monster, it's Garo. The monsters were correct, in fact. Garo himself was the man approaching the monster. He appeared somewhat younger and wore a whole black skin-tight suit, but otherwise he looked about the same as he does now. But the 4-armed creature simply smiled, regardless of how terrified the monsters were. He said, Finally, you show up. The human monster, Oxform Lab's special subject, the hero hunter. We meet at last. Are you here to save this girl? Don't tell me you're trying to be the hero? Garo, obviously irritated, retorted, Heeft. Don't belittle me to that. I know her. Now release the girl. You've had your round with her. The monster laughed, Well, I'm not done. If you want to get me off her, you're gonna have to. Horrible gasps were heard after a loud impact. The other monsters gasped as they saw the head of one of them hit the ground and blood splash on the ground, shocking them. But Garo didn't care about any of that. He simply stood there, his fist positioned exactly where the head of the monster had been. However, now that its head was gone, the hero hunter simply sighed, set aside his smoking fist, and turned to leave. Damn, what a mess. I'm getting out of here now, he replied. Then he did what he had said. The robot guards by the entrance didn't bother him, and he didn't care that the frightened monsters were staring at him. But the girl's attention was drawn to all of this, and she gazed at the hero hunter with a perplexed expression. Tatsumaki narrated in the present day, Garo, the hero hunter. I actually met him on that day. I had been working at Oxform Labs for 4 years at that point, and nobody had ever been nice to me. Actually, the only goal of every day was to survive. He didn't do the terrible, unimaginable things that the monsters, robots, and ruthless scientists did to me. He was different. He was definitely not a hero. Nevertheless, he saved me back then. The flashback then moved on to another scene. The scene there wasn't very good, though. Despite the young girl's cries of desperation, Dr. Psychos was dragging her by the hair on the floor. The doctor stopped, but she slammed a door open and flung her into a small, dark room, hitting her face on the hard, cold metal floor. With a sadistic smile, Dr. Psychos said, Same time next week, Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki remained silent. Instead, frightened of the malevolent doctor, she crawled backwards. Luckily, the doctor avoided approaching her. Tatsumaki was left to crawl to a wall and lay back on it, where she started to cry with her legs to her chest, after she simply shut the door. "Hey, can you keep it down?" a voice in the background yelled. Tatsumaki glanced at the wall and twitched her head. She had only heard the voice for a few minutes, so she recognized it. However, she was still unsure of the source of the voice. Garo?" she asked. She looked around, the tears on her cheeks showing. Garo's tone was dry as he answered, "Oh, it's you. No wonder I've been hearing someone crying since the day I got up here. What's your name?" Tatsumaki stopped and dabbed at her tears. She said, "I'm Tatsumaki." Garo answered, "Oh, so you're the kid that doctor seemed so eager of." Despite his continued lack of interest in her presence, he went on. "Anyway, look up. We're able to talk through that ventilation shaft over there. But don't get any ideas of getting through it. It's security locked." Following instructions, Tatsumaki looked up. Garo was correct. She was able to speak to him because of a vent located at the top of the wall. Even so, she looked down at her feet and felt sad that she couldn't use it to get away. "Hey!" exclaimed Garo. "I gotta ask, why do you keep holding back?" "Huh?" asked Tatsumaki. Garo replied, "You're Quirk. You're one of those Espers, right? You're supposed to be one of those second-generation people with quirks. I want to know why you keep holding back." Tatsumaki answered in a dejected manner, "I'm not holding back. I'm weak, I can't fight, I don't want any of these, I just—" "Stop talking!" Garo shouted. Tatsumaki was taken aback by his tirade, particularly as he went on, "I detest it when children complain. I'm happy to be here in part because of that. You know what I detest more, though? When someone lies because they're hurt, I detest it. I'm telling the truth." Tatsumaki yelled, sadly insisting, "I'm not strong, being strong is not what I want, all I want is freedom, I want my sister to return." "Then take some action. Here's some advice." Garo shouted angrily. "You will have to put up a fierce fight if you wish to escape this place. People like those monsters will take advantage of you and crush you if you don't." Tatsumaki shuddered instantly. She didn't want to acknowledge it, but Garo was correct. She had been in similar situations before, but instead of expressing it, she simply lowered her head to gaze at the floor. "I'm grateful that you saved me back there," she said. Though his tone was anything but appreciative, Garo said, "Really, don't thank me. You didn't get it from me. I simply detest it when people overreact." After muttering, "I see," Tatsumaki had an idea. "May I ask you a question?" "You just did. In any case, have you considered fleeing?" Tatsumaki answered, "Right." "Yup." Tatsumaki answered right away, her heart nearly skipping a beat as a hopeful expression appeared on her face, and she looked back up at the ventilation shaft before continuing, "Then let's collaborate. If we can, I'm sure." "No. Don't take this personally, kid, but you're pathetic," Garo screamed. "All you do is cry, and you won't fight. Besides, I'm sufficiently recovered to get away on my own. I simply decide not to go just yet." Tatsumaki was shocked. She had hoped that this might be her opportunity, but it was not, and so she turned back to the ground, silent and despairing. "So, what's keeping you here? It's obvious that you dislike me," she asked. "Phew. You're at last changing your mind. You've probably heard by now, so there's no need for bad introductions," Garo said, sounding amused at the time but without receiving a response from Tatsumaki. "The hero hunter is me. I found more heroes than I can remember. Hell, I sent my old fart-face master and his brother to a coma for good. But after that, I met him." "He?" Tatsumaki asked, looking up curiously even though she didn't seem particularly interested. "Him." Garo now sounded absent-minded. "That man, he was no weakling. He was far more powerful than I could have ever dreamed. The fact that I knew nothing about him prior to our meeting even astounded me. It was obvious to me that he was a hero. He still defeated me, though, regardless of how many heroes I defeated, how strong I got, or even how far I pushed myself. I seemed to be nothing more than a toy in his hands. I was never taken seriously by him. He simply had that bored expression on his face." Tatsumaki heard him click his tongue after that. Just one blow. In the end, that was all it took. "I was no match for him, which irritates me," Garo said angrily. "For that reason, I need to get stronger. No, I'm going to get stronger. I'll get so strong that I won't need a hero. I won't let even All Might stop me. I shall be the emblem of terror." "You won't succeed." "What?" Tatsumaki muttered. "I said you won't succeed." Although her tone sounded pessimistic, she went on, "The hero always beats the villain. They always come through for you. Whoever it was that beat you, he's a hero and will beat you again." Hee. Garo chuckled, clearly enjoying Tatsumaki's remark. "You're funny, kid. Indeed, you are." Where's the hero to come to your rescue now? I've been waiting a long time for a fight with one, so hurry up. Tatsumaki fell silent at once, feeling humiliated and appalled by the young man's comment, but Garo went on anyway. Garo mockingly remarked, "Oh right, there's no hero here." Then he went on with a proud tone, "Just know this, Tatsumaki. I'll beat him one day. Once that is finished, I will terrorize the world until everyone is familiar with the symbol of fear." Garo. Retrospective. A year later, as she walked slowly through a corridor wearing a white hospital dress, Tatsumaki clutched her head and walked with a slight headache, despite the fact that the hallways, rooms, and pretty much everywhere were littered and severely damaged. The walls had large dents and holes in them, and the ground was covered in dead men, monsters, and robot parts. With a hint of irritation, Tatsumaki muttered, "Damn, I have to get to her. Just where are they keeping her? This is my chance. I can't lose." Tatsumaki was interrupted by a booming barrage of gunfire, followed by the tearing away of robot parts, which caused Tatsumaki to walk to that corridor just in time to witness the fight's conclusion. The girl was more interested in the fact that Garo was standing there with an unconscious Fubuki in his hand than in the fact that the hallway was littered with robot parts. "Fubuki!" Tatsumaki exclaimed. "You're here, I see. Good," Garo said. Tatsumaki didn't respond. Instead, she clenched her fists and gave the hero hunter a fierce look, but he didn't seem to mind, so he approached her and grabbed Fubuki by the back of her shirt. "Grab her. In any case, I'm leaving," he declared. Fubuki. The Esper girl experienced a surge of emotions. Despite her sister's unconscious state, she was still emotional, and tears started streaming down her cheeks before she seized her sister in her arms and gave her a tearful hug. "You've arrived. You're still here," she let out a loud cry. Garo remained silent, averting his gaze only to proceed to scratch his hand into his hair before passing the Esper once more. "Hey, you and your sister need to leave this place. You went overboard, without looking back," he said. Tatsumaki turned back, still holding Fubuki, but she had one last thing to say to the hero hunter before she stopped crying. "I'm grateful. Many thanks," she yelled. When the Esper spoke again with great emotion, Garo, who had listened to the Esper well, turned sideways to her and remained silent. "I wouldn't be holding my sister in my arms now if it weren't for you, thus, You can stop there." Garo interrupted, appearing casual rather than stern or insulted by Tatsumaki. "I just happened to run into those robots," he said. "People who were stubborn wanted to get me. In any case, consider the rescue as proof that we're even. In return for you demolishing this facility, I saved your sister." "This place was taken down by me?" Tatsumaki asked in surprise. Garo turned away from her and waved, saying, "Well, I'm off. You don't remember. I believe the time has come for me to return to the world." Tatsumaki remained silent, watching the hero hunter walk on until he paused and turned to face her, which piqued her interest right away. Garo said, "You're free now. Let me give you some advice before I go. Make use of it to provide you and your sister with a good and respectable life. Don't ever become a hero, though. Now you know that the cape-wearing clowns never came to your aid. That was something you accomplished on your own. However, bear this in mind if you become a hero. There won't be anything else for me to do but track you down." Tatsumaki gave a slight grimace, but she didn't show it, mainly because she turned her back on him, and the hero hunter Garo left without saying anything more. Current day. It's been 3 years since then. I told myself after that day that I won't become a hero. It wasn't because of what he told me, but because I have a hatred for kind of people. When I came back to civilization, I saw their true colors. How can I be one of them when all they do is save the day for fortune and fame? I could never be part of their world, at least, that's what I thought. I ended up saving Midoriya and Katsuki from that villain and got a huge financial debt on my head. I won't be surprised if he did come for me. Anyway, there's no use feeling sad or scared. I'm different from the girl I was back then. I'm stronger than I was back then, both emotionally and quirk-wise. So just come at me, Garo. Even though you were closest to a kind person in that hellhole, I won't hold back against you," Tatsumaki said as she turned and started to leave. When Saitama entered the teacher's counters carrying a grocery bag, he didn't feel particularly special because Ua was known for hosting special guests. With that same stoic expression, he headed to All Might. All Might was in his normal form and appeared to be focused during that time. He was holding a book and reading the guidelines, which caused him to become anxious. The reason for this was that the book contained UA's rules and regulations, but if that wasn't enough, there was another aspect of it that worried the pro-hero. Ua has a flawed system. Depending on the homeroom teacher, they may still The reason for the sudden interruption of All Might's thoughts was Saitama, who dropped the grocery bag on All Might's table and attracted the pro-hero's attention. Without emotion, Saitama said, "Hey, got you some apples." Saitama. All Might looked to the hero. From there, he met the familiar face of the bored hero and sighed in response. "Oh right. Yes, I did say you were welcome to visit." Saitama said, "Yup." The bald pro-hero then grabbed an apple from the grocery bag, which naturally startled All Might a little but not for long, so All Might just laughed and reclined in his chair while Saitama chewed on the apple. "You're still the same person, are you?" All Might inquired. "How is Genos doing as assistant homeroom teacher?" Saitama paused, looked at the ceiling thoughtfully, then shrugged his shoulder and took another bite of the apple in his hand. I guess so. You did ask me to bring him here from back in the Himalayas." All Might insisted, "Well, I thought it would help him. You called me the day after you unintentionally made him your disciple and asked if there was a way for him to learn how to be strong, right?" Saitama chewed on the apple and said, "Yeah. Phew." All Might said, "Seriously, I've fought supervillains and I don't think any of them would be so. You've made some mistakes in your life, Saitama, but choosing a disciple when you're not even ready is a step high even for you." All right. I understand. Geez." Thankfully, the pro-hero calmed down and ate the remaining portion of the apple after Saitama yelled at him. In any case, All Might was drawn to something in the book he was holding, which made him so anxious that Saitama could see it as he read it. "Are you all right, All Might?" did he ask. "Yes, but no, I mean, the boy and Tatsumaki don't seem to be doing well based on what I see here regarding Ua." Saitama became worried at once. A Quirk test of apprehension. All of the students were astonished. They were on the Ua PE grounds, wearing the Academy's sports uniform, which was primarily blue with the exception of the white stripes, the letter A, and the red sleeves. In any case, whoever approached Aizawa from behind, Oako in particular, made it clear that this was unexpected. "How about the meeting with the guidance counselor and the ceremony? You all understand the school's reputation for freedom on campus," Aizawa replied, turning back to the students with a slightly serious expression. "If you want to be heroes, we don't have time for frilly niceties. That freedom extends to us educators as well." They were confused, not because they couldn't, but because no one spoke to them. Luckily, Aizawa went into further detail in his explanation. "Activities you are familiar with from middle school, such as softball pitch, standing long jump, endurance running, grip strength, sustained sideways jumps, upper body exercise, and seated toe touch, are all physical tests where you were not allowed to use your quirks. Standardizing such records and monitoring average performance levels are still unfinished business for the nation. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology is negligent in this regard." He then turned to face Tatsumaki and told her to stand in a circle. The Esper was unsure of the exact plan, but she obeyed and did as he said, and as a result, the man threw a ball to her, which she caught in her cupped hand. "How far could you throw a softball in middle school, Tatsumaki?" Aizawa inquired. "Very little. That was quite low," Tatsumaki said. "Then this time, try using your quirk. Anything you do is okay as long as you stay inside the circle," he said. Tatsumaki turned forward, holding the ball lightly in her hand without taking much of a stance, and then brought that hand back, ready to throw it, despite the fact that she had listened but was not particularly interested. "They had better watch me and learn a few things because if Ua is just going to be like this, then graduating from this academy and paying off that damn debt will be too easy. Back in middle school, I was not allowed to use my quirk. In fact, even if I could have used it, I wouldn't have changed that." Tatsumaki's quirk was activated, and everyone's attention was drawn to her as they all stared in some astonishment at the girl's impressive aura. Katsuki, on the other hand, merely sneered in a low tone, while Izuku was mildly amazed and Genos stood motionless and watched intently. "I must pay attention because, as I know Tatsumaki, this isn't worthy of her full potential. She'll be done with this in a flash." "Tatsumaki, you can succeed," Izuku gave her a cheer. The Esper responded with a small smirk and a small step back, and then she made contact with the softball and hurled it with such force that it sent a blast of wind at everyone on the ground, but instead of the ball soaring into the air, it tapped on the ground a few feet away from the Esper, shocking everyone. "Hua? What just took place?" Oako said in disbelief. Trying not to lose his temper, Iida remarked, "That was unexpected." Most of the students were confused at the same time, but Katsuki was smiling at the result, and Genos was also perplexed as he stood there examining Tatsumaki, who was just standing there motionless with her aura gone. There's a problem. Tatsumaki ought to have made that throw in less. Genos stopped and looked at Aizawa. You! Tatsumaki shouted fiercely. Before anyone knew it, the girl had marched over to Aizawa and grabbed him by his shirt, much to the surprise of the students standing there, but it didn't matter to Tatsumaki, who wasn't going to hold back, especially as she glared at Aizawa's red eyes. The Esper's face was flushed red with rage as she glared at her homeroom teacher. Did you not really do that? Admit it, she insisted. The Esper now expected the homeroom teacher to be open, but the man just took her hand off his shirt and went on, unfazed, to the ball. To be a hero means to be authentic. You can only hold yourself accountable if you're willing to hold back and not put forth any real effort. Aizawa picked up the ball and tossed it to Katsuki, who instantly caught it and stood in the circle Tatsumaki had been standing in, but the man disregarded Tatsumaki's silent fidgeting and angry glare at the teacher's back. Achieve what Tatsumaki did, but do it better. Hold nothing back, Aizawa said. Tatsumaki was even more enraged by that statement and wanted to scream at the homeroom teacher at that very moment, but she was already receiving looks and whispers from some of the other students, who were quick to criticize her behavior there because they were unaware of Aizawa's peculiarity. He grasped the ball and stretched his arm back at Katsuki, who had listened carefully to Aizawa's instruction and was confident he could outshine Tatsumaki. Got it. He focused, thinking, I hope you're watching, Tatsumaki. This is how you do it right. This is my chance to outshine that green-haired bitch. Katsuki boldly applied his quirk to his throw, and then the team threw the ball with such force that it sent an amazing shockwave, flying straight into the skies in a matter of seconds, while the smoke from the flames he used pushed back against the others, surprising them. The ball itself eventually hit the ground, but it was badly burned before Aizawa produced a portable device that displayed some numbers. The homeroom teacher said, before anything else, one must know what they're capable of. He then turned to face the other students and displayed the device's numbers, which came out to be 800.9. This is a rational metric that will form the basis of your hero foundation, Aizawa explained. Many students were instantly excited by that, expressing how amazing Katsuki's shot was and how they liked the idea of using their quirks. However, Izuku wasn't really listening, instead focusing on Tatsumaki, who stood silently by herself, which worried him. Tatsumaki. He pondered. Aizawa raised his voice once more, but his voice and face both started to sound threatening as he gazed at the pupils. You say it looks like fun? So you were planning to spend your 3 years here having a good old time? He asked in response to a student's comment. How did we end up as heroes? Okay, then. The student who receives the lowest number of points will be deemed hopeless and expelled immediately. When Izuku heard that, he became anxious and nearly tense. Tatsumaki simply clenched her fists and gave the homeroom teacher a fierce glare. That sparked a lot of reaction right away. Aizawa. Saitama said, that's really not good. The two ranked pro heroes were currently examining the book in All Might's hand, with Aizawa's passport and some obvious information about him on it. The number 1 ranked pro hero was still seated, and Saitama, the number 3 rank hero, was behind him, peering from behind. However, All Might remained silent, concerned about the homeroom teacher while he gazed at the book, so Saitama had no response and simply stood there sympathetically. Back at the scene, all of the students appeared ready and determined. If what Aizawa had just told them was true, then their future as UA students and as heroes was on the line, and as a result, they appeared to be resolute in various positions as they set their minds to it. Even Izuku felt somewhat confident and approached Tatsumaki, touching her shoulder. Hey, how are you? Did he ask? Tatsumaki muttered, yeah, I am. She didn't want to look at the teenager, but she did push Izuku's hand away from hers and turned to Aizawa with determination, saying, Sensei. Izuku was startled, but he recovered quickly as he and everyone else turned to listen to Tatsumaki when she spoke again in a louder voice. Aizawa turned to Tatsumaki, and the same was true for the others. There is no way that this is over, Tatsumaki yelled. You may have gotten the drop on me before, but it won't happen again. She then pointed to the teacher. I'm going to pass your stupid test and destroy your pride completely, you got that? Aizawa grinned back. Something about Tatsumaki's speech seemed to excite him a little more, perhaps because he was being challenged by someone who didn't appear to be intimidated by his choices. Excellent. We dispense with students as we please because we have freedom as teachers, Aizawa said proudly, a menacing smile on his face as he held back some of his long hair. Tatsumaki, do you truly believe you can manage that? Indeed, strongly, Tatsumaki yelled, just watch and see, I'll prove myself to you. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. Then, after everything had subsided, tension was evident among UA students. They were worried because if they finished last in Aizawa's course, they would be expelled. As she stood, even Ochako spoke out against its unfairness. This is our first day here, but even if it weren't, that's just too unreasonable. Aizawa was unconcerned. Whether or not it was justifiable, his motivations for doing so were very evident only recently. However, he chose to elaborate on it with a surprisingly bored expression after she objected. Natural disasters, massive accidents, ego-mad villains, all kinds of calamites when we least expect them. Japan's now positively drenched in unreasonable, and it's our job as heroes to reverse it all and restore reason. He clarified. If you were counting on a friendly chat at the local McDonald's after school, that's too bad. From now on for the next 3 years all you can expect from your life at UA is one hardship after the next. From there, he lifted a finger in a slight smile. This is, plus ultra, I expect you to overcome these trials and climb to the top. However, Iida said, the pressure is on. So this is UA's baptism, the ultimate in hero training. I have no choice but to give it my all. Katsuki smirked and shifted his arm. He was talking about the time he threw that ball when he said, I could throw it further. It makes no difference, just bring it. Tatsumaki gave it careful thought. It was reasonable to assume that everyone was prepared for the situation at hand. Despite their nervousness, even students like Ochako and Izuku were committed to doing their share. In reference to Katsuki's accomplishment, Aizawa remarked, now then, that was the demonstration. Time to step up to the plate. The 50-meter dash is the first trial. Iida proved to be the most effective of them all, and he sped through the race in just 3.04 seconds thanks to his quirk, engine. His racing opponent, a girl with a frog-like trait, was running behind him on all fours even when he reached the finish line. Looking back, Iida thought, I had to go straight to third gear for the 50-meter. Well, that's him in his element. What interests me is what he'll do for the other trials, Aizawa said of the teenager. Asui Suyu, who earned a score of 5.58 seconds, was the frog-like girl who eventually crossed the finish line, though not as quickly as Iida. She rubbed her frog-like tongue out and said, ribbit. It was Ochako's and another student's turn to race, so she tapped her feet with her hands while keeping an idea in mind to give herself a small advantage. I'll reduce the weight of my shoes and my uniform as well, she thought. A robot then announced that the girl had made it to the finish line despite her body frame, despite the fact that her running opponent, a man with a kangaroo-like quirk, had the advantage over her. It stated, 7.15 seconds. Ochako was relieved because her score was higher than her middle school performance. Her quirk was zero gravity, which allows her to lessen the gravity of anything she touches. If she does it too much, it can make her woozy. Izuku immediately recognized Yuga as the man who had seen his first robot killed during the entrance exam, but if that wasn't enough, the man passed him with a slight tap on the teenager's shoulder and a brilliant grin. It's my turn now, so please support me, he uttered those words. What? The blonde teen's companion was a girl with pink fuzzy hair and horns. Izuku was perplexed, and Tatsumaki was too, just raising an eyebrow at the boy, but it made no difference. The teen did something else strange at that moment, going to the starting line and then turning at it even though the girl with the pink hair was standing straight. However, it didn't matter to him because, as soon as Genos gave the all-clear, he shot a beam from his belly button and was flung back, surprising even his running opponent, who just watched in shock as she attempted to keep up and failed. As a result, Yuga emerged victorious, crossing the finish line at 5.51 seconds, according to the standing robot, while Mina Ishido trailed behind. If I keep shooting for longer than 1 second my tum-tum will collapse, you know, Yuga replied. What is wrong with this guy? Mina slipped out. It was Yuga's turn after Aizawa had been evaluating each student's peculiarity on his own for a while. It's no secret to us teachers that the girl is one of those rumored espers. People like her would have more abilities than the ordinary quirk users, and add to the fact that she's strong in her own right has made her cocky and arrogant. Maybe I can fix that, she did dare me after all, he thought, then turned his attention to Tatsumaki, who was now watching Izuku head to the starting line. The pushing of quirks to their utmost limits shows me how much room for growth each of them has and allows me to take note of what they can and can't do yet. It was Katsuki and Izuku's turn now, and Tatsumaki watched intently as they ran off from the finish line, appearing to be side by side. Put that prick to shame, Midoriya. You'd better get through this, she thought. Katsuki crossed his arms at the race because he was going to do something explosive, and he didn't waste any time in letting out an explosive blast from his palms when Izuku happened to be within range. Hurry up, he yelled. What? Izuku was perplexed. Katsuki unexpectedly unleashed a brief blast from both palms, which took Izuku by surprise and sent him flying to the ground. Katsuki was able to use the power to sprint all the way to the finish line and win. 4.13 seconds. The robot declared. Though his quirk was explosion, which gave him a certain level of protection, Katsuki looked to his side, smoking with his hands at chest level, and thought about the race despite the fact that they were safe. It disperses the power if I use both hands, as I thought. What about Deku? Izuku's performance was poor. Katsuki's power distracted him, resulting in a poor score. The robot said, 7.02 seconds. What? What the hell was that, Midoriya? Tatsumaki yelled angrily, although she was far away. Her voice was obviously loud enough for everyone to hear. Did you not have this in the bag? Izuku remained silent, his head lowered and his gaze fixed on the ground as he considered the race. What's wrong with me? She's right. I should have completed this race with a higher score. No, it's because I didn't expect Kachan's quirk to nearly hit me. I need to improve my focus. I have 7 of these left to complete, and everyone else will undoubtedly continue using their quirk to get abnormal showings. In the meantime, I have to be careful not to use the serious series or I'll be sent to the hospital. Adjustment. I need to adjust it. If I can visualize it, I'm sure I can do it. Retrograde a 3 week ago. Your feeling of it, All Might asserted, returning for the moment to his typical, slender self with his arms outstretched. With his face turned away, Izuku exclaimed, so cool, just as expected of All Might. All Might then turned to his right and delivered a boxer's punch to the air, saying, you've already shown us your 100%, or in what you and Saitama call serious series. Izuku mumbled, yeah, and it ground my bones to dust. You don't see, child? The secret lies in your recollection of that feeling, All Might said. How did you feel? Izuku put his hand to his chin and started thinking back on the incident. Well, there was a kind of zap and then there was, like, a boom, imagine like an egg in a microwave, ding. Abruptly, All Might threw up blood away from Izuku. A little subtle, kid, but definitely different. If that's the metaphor, let's imagine this, he said, pointing to an imaginary microwave. As long as the egg doesn't burst, it will be okay if I turn off the microwave, reduce the wattage, and set the timer however you see fit. When you beat those point robots, you were a firm egg in a turned-off microwave. Think about it carefully. The pro hero then gestured to his forehead and said, I want you to think about that picture seriously because your first day of school is in 3 weeks. You might not see results in a day or two, but I believe you can. Time is on the horizon. Current day. The turn now came for Tatsumaki and a little boy, who was surprisingly short and had purple blobs on his head, but the Esper was unfazed and had a slight smirk on her face. This will be too simple. I'll show Sensei who's superior by using my special ability to zip right past this shrimp. The race then began, and even though the child was short, Tatsumaki and him appeared to be side by side. Nevertheless, Tatsumaki chose to use her quirk regardless. Take off, she yelled. Fortunately, it wasn't too bad because her racing opponent had cushioned her fall. The Esper's quirk instantly activated and lifted her off the ground, but for some reason it abruptly deactivated before sending her falling to the ground face front. The child, Minoru Mineta, whimpered in agony, ow, I thought I would feel a pair of soft pillows but all I feel is something flat. What? Tatsumaki, who was standing and obviously angry, kicked Minoru, sending him flying. You fucking perverttt, WHO are you calling flat? As if that weren't enough, Tatsumaki's kick had sent the kid flying past the finish line, earning a score. Tatsumaki was now flushed red, and not only had her quirk failed on her, but a perverted short teen had also felt her chest and made an open comment about it. 4.21 seconds. The robot declared. WHAAATTTT. Tatsumaki yelled in surprise. Minoru simultaneously raised his fists in the air and spat out sand from his hand, saying, yes, I made it. How exciting. No, you bothersome little pest, you didn't. Tatsumaki shouted fiercely. Aizawa remained silent, never mentioning that a runner could not be assisted by another runner, and his eyes were red, particularly when Tatsumaki turned to face him and gave him a low-pitched growl. She snarled, you should get going or do you want to lose that bad? Said Aizawa, unfazed. Instead of responding, Tatsumaki snubbed him angrily, blushing, and fled, so by the time she crossed the finish line, her score was. According to the robot, 7.12 seconds. That's worse than Deku, Katsuki chuckled. How pitiful. The grip strength test, trial 2. Now that they were all in the same auditorium, The students had to squeeze on a grip measuring device in their hands, so Izuku was concentrating on it and tightened his grip a little bit more than he usually does when smashing. He thought, don't let the egg explode. He also recalled the feeling he got after defeating the no-point robot. Luckily, a bit of luck was on his side, and his grip worked somewhat because the numbers on it rose higher than one might anticipate. As a result, when he held it up to his face and looked at it, a broad smile appeared on his face. "My number is good," he cried out. Everyone turned to face him at once, and while some students found it strange, others figured out what he was talking about when they saw him holding the device to his chest with a grateful smile on his face. One girl, Momo Yaoyorozu, with a long black ponytail, said, "Weird kid." Mina said, "Yup." The only two who had a different viewpoint were Ochako and Iida. "I have no doubt in the person who scored the highest in the entrance exam, so he must have gotten something impressive," he thought. "Whoa. Well done," Ochako yelled. "Phew, in a nasty way," Katsuki said, "he probably got like 50. The teenager was mistaken. Instead, Izuku received a score that was much higher than anyone could have predicted, more than 1000 kgw, which was significantly higher than most people's, and that was saying a lot given that the student who came in just behind him was a tall, muscular teen with several attached arms. His score was 540 kgw. Due to her quirk, which had refused to activate again, Tatsumaki remained silent while the majority of the students focused on a tearful Izuku. Her grip device displayed 30 kgw, which was even lower than what Izuku had in middle school. "Gosh," angrily, the girl muttered. "Hey, are you doing all right over there?" Tatsumaki turned to face the source of the voice, and since she knew exactly who it was before she turned, she snarled at Aizawa with a great deal of hatred when he approached, and she could tell what he was doing because his eyes were red once more. "Sensei, don't bullcrap me. Both of us are aware of your actions," Tatsumaki shouted angrily. "This comes after the 50-meter race. What on earth? Don't mess with their tests." Ignoring Tatsumaki's comment and the fact that all the students were now staring at them, Aizawa said, "Huh." Instead of arguing, he closed his eyes and opened them again to reveal their natural color. "Under mine, you say? You didn't seem to want the same treatment as everyone else, in my opinion. Plus ultra refers to performing at your highest level even when circumstances appear to be going wrong. You are not worth challenging if you are unable to recognize that." This surprised Tatsumaki, who didn't know why, but what Aizawa said made her heart sink. Aizawa sounded disappointed in her, which was strange because he had been harsh with her, so he turned away and went to the door. "Set up your electronics on the table by the door. We're leaving again," Aizawa declared. "It's time for the standing long jump." Although everyone except Tatsumaki obeyed the teacher, the pressure in the classroom was still evident, as evidenced by the confused looks some students gave Tatsumaki as they walked past her with little to no concern. Izuku and Ochako also did not comply, but unlike the girl who eventually left, the teenage boy approached the Esper. "What was that about, Tatsumaki?" did he ask. Even though he was by her side, Tatsumaki turned her head away from him and wore a dejected expression. Muttering, "Nothing, just go." But Tatsumaki interrupted, "Just go," and, surprisingly, she wasn't as irritable as she usually was. However, that didn't mean Izuku was okay with it. He was clearly worried as he looked at the girl, but he felt that there was nothing he could do, so he walked backwards to the door while continuing to stare at her. "Well, if you want to talk about it, just know I'm with you," he replied. Before departing, Izuku turned and placed his own grip device on the table. Genos was responsible for everyone's devices being there by silently standing by the table and labeling them with the names of the students. It was strange that a girl like her should care about what her teacher said, but here she was, depressed and still holding the device. She used her quirk to press on the grip of the device to a number of 1000 plus kgw, but she still sighed and reduced it back to its number of 30 kgw. She stood silent for a few seconds back at Tatsumaki, her mind still recalling what Aizawa had said and how he sounded towards her. "Tatsumaki, I sincerely hope this experience has not negatively impacted you." Genos observed this. The limit of these devices is 1000 plus kgw. Therefore, if one were to grip it to such a number, even if their grip by their quirk is stronger than the number, the plus sign to 1000 would indicate such so the device doesn't overload. As time passed, every student gave their best effort on the tests. Amazing scores were achieved by those whose peculiarities enabled them to pass tests like the sideways jump and standing long jump. The same was true for Izuku, who shocked a lot of his classmates by attempting to modify his quirk but failing to get to the serious series. Although his grip device trial may have given him a boost in motivation, the results weren't entirely clear. In actuality, he wouldn't have failed even if he hadn't made it to and adjusted the serious series. In any case, it didn't seem to matter. Izuku kept trying to get to that level of strength but was unable to do so. As a result, time passed and they soon had to face the pitch, the last trial. Oako was among those who threw the ball, but she was rewarded with an impressive and astounding score. One student cried out, "Infinity? Holy cow, she got an infinity?" They were correct. The gadget in Aizawa's hand showed that the girl had indeed received infinity. However, the girl's zero gravity quirk, rather than her physical strength, was the reason for the impressive score. In any case, Izuku was so focused on the task at hand that he became restless when someone tapped his shoulder, forcing him to turn around and see who it was. Oako was the one. With a hint of concern, she said, "Hey, are you doing okay?" Izuku answered, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be?" He was concerned that someone might have noticed what he was doing. Luckily, it didn't appear to be the case. Oako actually just grinned a little. "That's good to hear. I just wish it was the same for Tatsumaki." "Tatsumaki?" inquired Izuku, perplexed. Ochako's smile faded as she gestured toward Tatsumaki. Izuku was initially perplexed, but he followed the girl's direction. As a result, when he saw Tatsumaki standing alone and staring dejectedly at the ground, he too scowled. It worried him right away. But before he could say anything more, Oako spoke. "Since that time with Sensei, Tatsumaki hasn't been doing so well at the other trials," Oako groaned. "What?" Izuku exclaimed in shock. "Why is she?" Then the teenager had an idea. "I'm nodding off once more." "Why?" Oako said it already. "I'm a complete moron. I didn't notice Tatsumaki's mood because I was too busy adjusting the serious series power level. I ended up being a friend." Oako said, "I should go talk to her." "What?" Surprised, Izuku asked. "Why you don't have to do that?" Oako said, "Well, I have to." A tiny, endearing smile appeared on her face. "I've always wanted to meet Tatsumaki ever since I saw her defeat that villain in an internet video. She seems so amazing, and I really just want to be close to her. That's not to say I'm a fan." Only All Might, Fubuki, and Saitama had expressed concern for the Espers since he had first met Tatsumaki, so Izuku was shocked and taken aback by the fact that someone else was so deeply worried about her even though he didn't know much about her. "Sorry if it seemed I'm being selfish," Oako responded with sincerity. "I'm not trying to take advantage of her, but I really want to cheer her up, you know." Izuku responded with a slight smile, and since Oako had repeatedly shown himself to be a truly happy and considerate person, it was obvious that he had nothing against her. "Exactly," he grinned and said, "Good luck, many thanks." With that, the brown-haired girl approached the lonely Esper, who was sure to read Tatsumaki's mood with every step, but Tatsumaki still acknowledged her presence before giving her a threatening glare. "Why have you come here? Are you prepared to boast?" Tatsumaki inquired. No, but, phew, I'd rather not hear it," Tatsumaki snubbed. From there, she crossed her arms across her chest and turned her back at the girl. "Now leave me alone. Your sweetness is not something I have time for. You honestly make me feel ill, so take a step back." Despite a moment of uncertainty, Ochako's silence caused her to glance at her raised fist before turning back to the Esper. She had felt her heart sink when she heard those words from the girl who had inspired her. "I will not abandon you," Oako declared resolutely. "Phew. You realize how annoying you are?" I didn't think that." Oako silenced himself. Tatsumaki said, "Well, now you know." She then gave the girl a slight head turn and that same threatening look, saying, "I'll just leave if you're going to stand there. You really are a bother." Oako was deeply affected by that comment. If Tatsumaki's earlier remark wasn't enough, this one was the final straw. Even as Tatsumaki was leaving, her silence was all that was left until she turned to face the retreating girl with a dejected expression on her face. "You don't mean all that, Tatsumaki, do you?" she inquired. Tatsumaki paused and turned to face her a little. "What if I did?" she inquired. "Well, I would think you're just trying to shield your own feelings." Tatsumaki's eyes widened, shocked by that conclusion, but as she turned to face Oako fully, her expression turned into a small snarl. "What are you saying in the hell? You're unfamiliar with me," Tatsumaki bellowed. "We've not known each other well since the day we met," Oako said, her face soft and surprisingly calm despite the verbal abuse, even holding her hands together and looking to the ground. "You're right, I don't. You looked really cool right there, to be honest, and that's the only reason I knew about you. That was 10 months ago. There are many heroes in the world, but it was reassuring to know that there was one my age. Not happy, Tatsumaki said, so you're a fan. In any case, I have no desire to have one. As Oako acknowledged, I know, I didn't think you would be. However, I've noticed something about you. You seem to genuinely care about people, I believe. You're a decent person, judging by the times you rescued those students in that video and your protectiveness of Midoriya. I thought it was very kind of you to protect him from Iida. The girl then turned to Tatsumaki with an optimistic and outgoing expression on her face, saying, so please, Tatsumaki, you don't have to be alone. Is what Sensei said the reason you're acting this way? Sensei. Tatsumaki muttered, confused. Her mind then flashed to the moment she had with Aizawa before she realized it. Wait, how did she know about that? Oh yeah, everyone saw that. But still, why am I so fixated on that moment? Am I really like this because of him or? Retrospective. 4 years prior, a feminine figure stood in front of a young Tatsumaki who was on the ground sobbing. She was staring down at her with disillusionment, and it was Dr. Psychos. Dr. Psychos said, pathetic, is that all you can do? You know crying isn't going to change anything, right? You're here and forever mine, Tatsumaki. So cry as much as you want. You're a disappointment in my eyes unless you can actually do something with your pitiful life. Such a shame, you have so much potential in you. Current day. Oh, right, Tatsumaki realized. That day. I harbored intense hatred for that woman. She treated me like shit, looked down on me, and really got to me. I wonder if that's why Sensei's words had meaning. Was I truly reminded of that moment? That period when I was so helpless and useless? Tatsumaki. Hey, Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki's eyes widened. Huh? Oako stood in front of her, now nearer to her but wearing a perplexed expression. However, Tatsumaki grew sullen and posed a question before the girl could respond. Sweetness, Oako was called by the Esper. Can I ask you something? Sure. What would you do, if most of your life you've been a disappointment to those around you? She inquired. Don't get it wrong, this has nothing to do with me. The last part was not believed by Oako, but that question bothered her, and she gave it some real thought. Oako said, I honestly don't know. Tatsumaki muttered, figures, and turned away. Just as she turned to leave, Oako spoke once more. But in my opinion, I think you should try your very best, said the girl. Being a disappointment to someone can be scary, especially if it's someone you care about, at least that's what I think. But you just have to keep trying. I think, no, I know you're a strong girl, Tatsumaki. A radiant smile that seemed to sparkle appeared on her face. I'm sure if you try really hard, you can do anything. Turning back to the girl, Tatsumaki was stunned. She muttered, sweetness. She wouldn't admit it, but Ochako's words had a profound effect on her. They were so fair, honest, and motivating that it seemed like the Esper was inspired by someone other than Izuku for the first time. What should have been positive feedback instead made the girl feel uncomfortable. On the other girl's shoes, the Esper abruptly vomited some of her breakfast as a result. Oako exclaimed, startled, ah, you puked again. Tatsumaki disagreed. As a matter of fact, she turned back to her with a confident expression on her face after using her quirk to wipe the remnants of her stomach on her mouth. She said, hey, Oako was it? Thanks. Oako was a little surprised. Her shoes had just been through a puke attack, and she was still recovering. As a result, the girl's response was a mixture of relief and uncertainty. She said, I'm glad I could help. Now, if you could just use your quirk to help me out. Genos had been listening and watching for some time. However, his focus had been on Oako and Tatsumaki rather than the other students. As a result, he had an idea and turned to face Aizawa with it. Genos said, Sensei, I have a request. Let Tatsumaki take the pitch. I have a 99.1% certainty that she'll do great. 99.1 huh? Those are good numbers, Aizawa said, without showing any enthusiasm however. Sure. I permit it. I was already planning on expelling her anyway, so this might as well be her last chance to prove herself and change my mind. Genos nodded and said, understood. He then turned to face the other pupils, Izuku in particular. I understand your turn is now, however circumstance has changed. Tatsumaki shall take the pitch before you. Right, said Izuku. With a smile on his face, he turned to face Tatsumaki and saw the girl approaching him, Oako trailing behind. Tatsumaki said resolutely, I heard my name. Hand me the ball, Midoriya. She left behind all traces of her melancholy and negative emotions as she confidently made her way to the teenage boy, surprising him because he had never seen this side of her before. However, Izuku didn't mind her persona. Even before he handed her the ball and walked back to watch her take the field, he was, if anything, pleased for her. Izuku said, "Good luck, Tatsumaki." Then he looked over at Ochako, who was standing beside him. "I don't know how you did it, but thank you." Ochako returned the smile. Other than feeling grateful to Izuku, she was at a loss for words. In any case, the Esper took a step back and held the ball tightly as she faced Tatsumaki. Aizawa was holding the ball in her hand like a pitcher, and even though she hadn't activated her yet, she could already feel her presence nearby. "Feeling cocky, are you?" he inquired quietly. Tatsumaki said, "Not cocky, or overconfident." Before her quirk instantly came into play, her attention was fixed on the sky. "This is just me understanding things now, plus ultra." Suddenly, a wave of energy that no one could have predicted swept through the area. Aizawa and Genos, the students, could already feel the force of the wind pushing against them from Tatsumaki. Therefore, some students were shocked by the power boost, while others were eager to see what would happen. As a result, Aizawa watched without intervening as Tatsumaki threw the ball with all of her strength. Before long, there was a loud boom and a burst of wind. In addition to breaking the sound barrier in a matter of seconds, Tatsumaki's throw was so powerful that it was able to push some students back and a certain little pervert to the ground. However, Aizawa's now smiling face as he held the handheld device that measured the ball's throw distance was unable to match the students' shock and disbelief. It was showing the infinite symbol. "You finally get it, don't you, child? Maybe you have what it takes to be a real hero here, dead or not. Tatsumaki, congratulations. Now, let's see if you can overcome the numerous obstacles that stand in your way of becoming a hero." Therefore, it was obvious that this moment could represent a change in Tatsumaki's life. Her green hair blew blissfully in the gentle breeze as she stood there, smiling broadly and gazing up at the sky for the first time in her life. She was ready to confront them now that she knew what might be in store for her. There were faint cries of surprise in the training area. Everyone was staring at Tatsumaki with a fresh perspective on UA's Esper after a while had passed since she had thrown the ball. Amazing, Momo whispered. According to Sui, yup, ribbit. As a result, Genos had his own focus even though everyone else was muttering. Like everyone else, he could see that there were no more clouds in the area of the sky where Tatsumaki had thrown the ball. However, given the robotic expression on his face, he had anticipated this. Even now, Tatsumaki, also known as Esper X, has demonstrated her immense potential. For the sake of the world, it is fortunate that Ua will be able to assist her in realizing that. But if this power had stayed with Oxform Labs, Genos reasoned, there's no question that the threat Tatsumaki would become would possibly surpass Garo. "Holy shit! Is that an infinity?" exclaimed one of the girls. Like everyone else, he wore the Ua sports uniform. He was also called Eijiro Kirishima and had red spiky hair. The handheld device containing the score was currently in Aizawa's hand. To everyone's surprise, it bore the symbol of infinity. When everyone saw it, there were even more cries of amazement and wonder. Even Izuku was astounded, but an agitated Katsuki was not as impressed. How in the world did that girl receive such a high score? Katsuki pondered. Damn it, she's attempting to make me look foolish. She and Deku are probably complicit as well. Well, it will not work, the top spot will go to me. You only observe, Tatsumaki. Izuku was there in the meantime. Before an idea struck him and caused him to appear depressed, he stood there in silence, his eyes wide. Tatsumaki is incredible. I wonder if I can truly compete with her strength. With some skepticism, he thought. He then turned to face his hand and balled it into a fist. The greatest hero in the world, All Might, gave me the quirk. One for all. To a certain extent, I can use it, but... Alright, that's enough. Tatsumaki, get off the pitch. Midoriya, you're next, Aizawa said. Tatsumaki snubbed the man as she turned to face him. She was experiencing something new in herself only a few seconds ago. But now that the moment was over, she simply approached Izuku, who was about to pass her, in silence. Whispering, "Hey, Midoriya," Tatsumaki said. "Tatsumaki, don't screw this up. Also don't overthink it. I'll be watching, so give it your all or else." What? Izuku exclaimed in shock. Tatsumaki, regrettably, did not respond. When Izuku arrived at the pitch, she simply turned around and walked back to the others. The teenager stood quietly now, a nervous expression on his face, and all eyes were on him. I'm at a loss for what to do. Should I modify it or should I just use the least amount of power that I am able to control? He pondered. But it's not good, Even though I've worked out some good points, I still can't use the serious series power. The endurance run, the toe touch exercise, and the upper body exercises are the only things left after this, so if I want to get a high score, I have to do it, or I can just choose the scores I can get with the least amount of effort. Everyone else has at least one trial in which they performed exceptionally well. Because I might not be able to use the serious series effectively at this rate. Iida observed, Midoriya's been working out well. Katsuki shouted, what, how, at Iida. He was pointing at Izuku at the same moment. He's fucking quirkless, there's no way he'll survive. Quirkless? Asked Iida. Did you not see what he did in the entrance exam and just recent? Fucking luck. Exclaimed Katsuki. That quirkless shit possibly cheated. Just keep your glasses on and see, he's done for here. Just look at him, he's quiet and nervous, he'll be XP. Tatsumaki interrupted abruptly. She screamed, can you stop talking, flame brain? When the teenager turned to face her, she was currently standing behind Katsuki with her own attitude. Right now shut up and watch. Izuku will wipe that pride of yours pretty soon. Why you bitch? Swore Katsuki. Language, exclaimed Iida. The teenager inhaled deeply upon returning to Izuku. Up until that point, he had listened to what the three had to say. He therefore took a step back and gripped the ball tightly while maintaining a focused expression. Izuku thought, Tatsumaki, All Might, Mom, Saitama. Izuku started to recall some people's words at that precise moment. Tatsumaki had remarked, maybe it's not so bad to be an idiot. You have the potential to be a hero, All Might said. You're really awesome right now, his mother had remarked. According to Saitama, humans are strong because we can change ourselves. After all of that, Izuku felt prepared, and he pulled back his right arm before calling forth the power of One for All, which manifested as an energy-surging, red and black arm. Izuku yelled in his mind, I will be one. Izuku felt his power disappear and the ball bounce on the ground a few meters away from him as the teenager threw the ball, but before his hand had left it, Aizawa's eyelids widened to reveal his red eyes. 46 meters. The robot declared. Izuku and Tatsumaki were both taken aback, but the scene only made Katsuki laugh aloud before turning to face Tatsumaki. Hey, Terror Tornado, what did you just say? Tatsumaki snarled fiercely, but instead of turning to face the teenager, she gazed at Izuku with a thoughtful expression and a hint of annoyance. Before her eyes widened in realization, Tatsumaki thought, what the hell was that, Midoriya? You were doing so well, of course. The one who's really behind it was. One teacher, who was none other than Aizawa, said, I erased your quirk. The students, Genos and Aizawa were unaware that they were being watched, but it wasn't as horrible or frightening as one might think because the two people watching the scene from the side of a building were the number 1 and number 3 pro heroes, Saitama with his stoic face and All Might in his muscular form. This didn't change the fact that Aizawa had a grudge against Izuku, though, as evidenced by the serious expression on his face as the cloth around his neck unraveled and he made his way directly to the boy. With an authoritative tone, he uttered, it defies reason. How did someone like you get into this academy? Since Tatsumaki's condition was the reason I kept erasing her quirk, I can relate to it. However, you are something else. Removed the peculiarity of Tatsumaki? Iida questioned, surprised. He then turned to Tatsumaki, with the same for Oako. Is this true? Phew. It is, of course. The nerve of that guy. Tatsumaki said, glaring at the teacher in a tone that also conveyed annoyance. After making me look foolish, he now shows off his peculiarity. I'm not sure if I like him. Oako answered, oh, so why couldn't you have simply mentioned his quirk at that point? Tatsumaki said, and paused, but soon a dark and humorously melancholy thought came to her. Wait, why didn't I just say? In any case, Izuku was stunned by the news he had just heard when he returned to the scene, but he knew right away who Aizawa was as a hero. You have to be the hero who can make the person he's staring at lose their peculiarity. Eraserhead is the hero who erases. While it was evident that Aizawa was a truly underground hero, Saitama and All Might were aware of the reason why, and none of the other students knew who that was. Isn't that Aizawa? With that stoic look, Saitama remarked, it's been a long time since I met him. All Might agreed, saying, you don't often get together with other heroes. You most likely lack your own hero agency because of this. Too much trouble. Remarks Saitama. All Might turned to Aizawa and said, right, but you and Aizawa have something in common. Anyway, he says it obstructs his work. If only I could have warned you, Midoriya, my boy, you both detest media exposure. When Aizawa returned to the scene, he kept moving toward Izuku, who felt pressured by every step the man took. Then there was what he said. From what I've seen, you can't control the full power of your quirk, which means you can't use it effectively most of the time. Did you think someone would come to your aid after you injured yourself again? Don't rely on your green-haired friend to help you. Izuku said, No, I don't Jew. But then the teenager's words were interrupted. This occurred as a result of Aizawa's cloth encircling the teenager's arms and holding onto him. If that wasn't enough, Aizawa then created the cloth to draw the teenager near to him while he was speaking. Whatever hopes you may have nursed of your imminent rescue, as you can see, nobody is in a position to come to your aid. That means your friend. I can tell how close you are, or rather how close you believe you are to her. Oako looked worriedly at Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki. With a serious tone, Tatsumaki answered, He's right. But she was focused on Izuku and Aizawa. I don't like Aizawa-sensei, but he has a point about Izuku. That kid has a good heart, perhaps one too good for his good, but he doesn't think things through. I have my faith in him, but if he makes a routine of collapsing just by using his full power, I'll end up seeing him as a burden. That's the harsh reality I'll be willing to show him. Tatsumaki's conclusion somewhat surprised Oako. She would be happy to assist Izuku if he needed it, but there was some validity to what Aizawa said. Additionally, this now makes her wonder about Izuku. Anyway, the teacher continued, back at Aizawa and Izuku. There's a certain insufferable hero who made a name for himself by rescuing over 1,000 innocents from a disaster all by himself. You have his brute courage, but all you'll manage to do is run around like a blockhead who needs saving himself. Face it, your power won't help you to become a hero, Midoriya Izuku. Aizawa was done with that. After a brief pause, he let go of Izuku and closed his eyes before opening them. His eyes were no longer red this time. He said, I gave you back your quirk. Try the ball pitch a second time. Let's get this over with. Then Aizawa returned to his side, beside Genos, and when he turned to Aizawa, he had something to say about the cyborg. Genos stated firmly, Aizawa-sensei, there is something I wish to inquire. First it was Tatsumaki, and now it is Midoriya Izuku. What is your goal? I do not see if this tactic teaching would help them become heroes if one becomes unmotivated as a result. Aizawa looked straight ahead and said, That's the thing, Genos. Your master isn't teaching you right. Today's society needs competent heroes. It needs people who knows the risks of what they're taking, not a kid who just dreams of doing what dedicated heroes have done. For now, just watch. Genos said, Understood. However, Aizawa was unaware that Genos took offense at the teacher's remarks. It had to do with his remarks regarding Saitama. It is unimaginable to talk about someone as great as Saitama. Aizawa gave Genos a sidelong glance. You have a promising future right now, young man. However, your misguided perception of Saitama may be preventing that. He's powerful. I am certain of that, but he was only able to hold his position in the Hero Society due to good fortune and timing. He would have been just another unidentified hero on the streets if not for the period of terror the hero hunter was attempting to instill. Izuku remained silent, back with the teenagers. As he reflected on what Aizawa had just told him, his hand gripped the ball that was back in his grasp. Yuga was with Oako in the meantime, his charmy smile and his hand on her shoulder. Are you worried for him? Don't worry, I, too, am, he replied. Bewildered, Oako questioned, who are you? Iida thought for himself. It looks like he's had some coaching, but, he replied. On his own, Katsuki added, he's going to get expelled for sure. Tatsumaki didn't answer anything. She would typically respond to Katsuki, but she was no longer certain about Izuku. However, she continued to focus on Izuku because she had a glimmer of hope for the boy. He's tenacious, Aizawa thought. In order to get some eye drip into his eyes, he briefly raised his head. Is he going to just wither and accept that position, or is he not going to back down from dying here? He has no prayer, no matter what direction he takes. Now, Izuku was the center of attention. While Aizawa and Genos had their own thoughts about him, every student had their own. All of that, though, didn't seem to matter to Izuku, who prepared to toss the ball while reflecting. He thought, I still can't adjust the serious series. Is there a chance I could change it on this one pitch? No, it's exactly as All Might informed me. I'm unable to finish it in such a short amount of time. Arg, shit. The teenager had just a few seconds left to toss the ball. No, I can't give up. With the power I have under control, I could throw this, but this is full power. It's all or nothing. Probability, 0. Aizawa has now corrected it. If you can't utilize your full potential, I'll fail you if you use what you can control instead, like you did in the last test. Someone who can't keep up and has a troublesome quirk is not welcome at UA. Izuku thought. Aizawa-sensei isn't wrong. At this point, the ball was being moved in a swing with his upper body hunched forward. Not just yet. I can't become a hero if I continue to use the meager amount of power I have. Not just yet. The ball was now only a few seconds away from leaving his grasp. Izuku actually only touched it with his finger. Not just yet. I'll never succeed if I don't put in a dozen times as much effort as everyone else. All Might found himself becoming interested in what he was seeing. He said, "Whoa, kid, are you for real?" Izuku continued. The only thing touching the ball now was his finger. Izuku focused all of his strength on that finger at that precise moment. I'll go full power at the last minute, for the shortest amount of time, right now. At last, Izuku did it. In that instant, his full power on that one finger showed electric-like power in red veins. As a result, when he flicked the ball, there was a loud boom and a tremendous wind that pushed back against him and everyone else. I'll demonstrate my abilities to you. Important series, important smash. Katsuki was completely shocked. When he saw the power Izuku had just used, his eyes widened and he suddenly felt a sense of drawback. However, the other students also showed some sort of surprise at the scene, so it wasn't just for him. Tatsumaki, on the other hand, simply stood with her arms folded across her chest and a faint smile on her face in the middle of the dying wind. Aizawa's mobile phone beeped. Before he looked down at it, Izuku's throw caught his attention. The gadget showed the symbol for infinity. Izuku started to straighten up at the same moment that he started to feel some pain from the finger he used. Izuku said in a pained voice, "It's not as excruciating as that other time." Aizawa's eyes went wide with a hint of surprise. The throw was more than 9,000 meters, according to the infinity symbol. However, this was still a surprise. He focused his energy on the tip of his finger rather than pitching at full force. I'm shocked, he thought. He took a third route instead of giving up or marching in the direction of failure. "Sensei!" yelled Izuku violently. As he stood there, he clenched his fist, which now contained his broken finger. I can still move. Oh ho! At last, Izuku impressed Aizawa, who grinned. All Might, who was still hiding by the side of the building with Saitama peeking behind him, whispered, "But that pretty superb, my boy. I was really worried there for a second." "Are you aware that he cannot hear you from here?" Saitama said. Perhaps because of the obvious excitement in his voice, All Might decided to ignore him. He still can't adjust the major power output. He cannot, however, afford to injure himself. In order to focus one for all at the tip of his finger, he waited until the last second. At the last minute, he used it for the least amount of time. What do you know, child? In fact, you're looking really good right now. You're simply going to disregard me, then? Not amused, Saitama questioned. And why the monologue? You seem to be one of those anime viewers who must explain what just transpired. Once more, the number one pro hero did not respond to Saitama. In any case, some students had their own reactions back at the scene. At last, you succeeded. Ochako raised her hands in a cheer. Your finger is swollen, Iida observed. This reminds me of the entrance exam incident. What an odd quirk. Yuga remarked, it's not stylish enough though. Who made the inquiry? Tatsumaki shouted to the teenager. Then there was Katsuki, who, in contrast to most students who were awestruck by Izuku's power, was utterly shocked and surprised by the scene. Having known Izuku for a very long time, they were essentially childhood friends. He had never once seen the green-haired boy exhibit a quirk, and it was not surprising that he became enraged as a result. What the fuck? He claimed to have won it, despite the fact that a quirk appears by the age of 4 at the latest. At last, the irascible teenager gave in to his feelings. Thus, a second later, as Izuku was about to attack him, the enraged Katsuki charged at him, exploding with his right hand. He yelled angrily, "What is this, Deku? Explain now, shitrag." "Midoriya!" cried Tatsumaki in alarm. Before, she had focused on the obnoxious Yuga. She was taken aback by Katsuki's actions because of this. Luckily, the irascible teenager was stopped. In this way, the teen was encircled by the same cloth that Aizawa had used on Izuku, which prevented him from moving even though he tried. Katsuki was thus restrained by his stomach, arms, and head. "Shit's this cloth. I can't." Katsuki managed to utter some words. At the same time, he found it difficult to turn toward Aizawa, which was the cloth's original source. Aizawa clarified, It's my special, capturing weapon, a steel wire alloy woven with carbon nanofibers. He was also on his way to Izuku and Katsuki. Geez, don't make me use my quirk so much. It was already a pain using it in the previous tests repeatedly. Then, with a hint of irritation, the instructor snatched up his cloth. I've got dry eyes. Damn it. Tatsumaki laughed. She took some pleasure, albeit not much, in the man's suffering for obvious reasons. However, Aizawa turned away after releasing Katsuki without noticing. He said, "We're wasting time. Prepare for the next trial." The instructor left the scene after saying that. Soon after, Izuku was approached by Oako and Tatsumaki. Oako inquired, "Is your finger okay?" Despite his nervousness, he answered, yes." His attitude did not sit well with Tatsumaki. Izuku's timid response to Oako, for some reason, caused her to strike him in the shoulder. She yelled, "Oi, be a man and stop being a wimp. You almost got me worried there, you know." Izuku said, "I'm sorry." Then he had an epiphany that caused his eyes to enlarge. "Wait, you were worried about me?" Tatsumaki's face blushed embarrassingly, and she instantly snapped back to reality, but instead of looking at Izuku, she turned away, feeling uneasy. She screamed, "Whoa, worried? Don't be stupid, idiot." She then turned to leave. However, they were unaware that Katsuki had been observing. But as he stood there, glaring at Izuku, his attitude remained unchanged. Katsuki thought, until just now, you were just another pebble on the road. Then, memories of his friendship with Izuku flashed through his mind. Izuku had previously mentioned that he shared a quirk with him, to which he responded unfavorably. He was annoyed that Izuku now had a quirk, but that was the past now. He ought to have been just another obstacle in my way. As time passed, the remaining tests continued. Everyone was able to give it their all, and Tatsumaki and Izuku were no exception. Surprisingly, the Esper was able to catch up to the majority of her classmates because of the experience she had in the pitch. That was not the case for Izuku, though. The team did well, but because of the pain in his finger, he never bothered to watch the serious series. Despite his strength, he was still developing. It should go without saying that the test was over. To hear their score, everyone gathered in front of Aizawa and Genos, though some people seemed more optimistic than others. Although Izuku was a little anxious, it wasn't as much as it would be if he didn't have some control over his quirk. However, after a lengthy conversation, Aizawa made what appeared to be a complete 180-degree turn. Oh yeah, that whole expulsion thing was a lie. When they heard that, everyone fell silent. It was actually so quiet that a pin drop might have been heard. Aizawa flashed a silly smile, and Iida, Oako, and Izuku in particular looked shocked by the news. It was a logical ruse to pull out your best performances, he stated. What? Exclaimed Oako, Iida, and Izuku in disbelief. Come on guys. Momo said calmly. Of course it was a ruse. Tatsumaki thought otherwise, but when the teacher turned away, she merely gave him a hateful glare without saying anything. Calmly, he said, and, right. Yep, with that, it's over. He turned and handed Midoriya a paper, saying, your curriculum sheets are back in the classroom, so give them a once-over. And Midoriya, go to Recovery Girl and get yourself patched up. Since your eyeballs will doubtless pop out of their sockets at tomorrow's absurd ordeal. Izuku accepted the document, but that didn't alter the fact that he was taken aback and perplexed by what had just transpired. However, if there was one positive outcome from this, it was that the teenager felt some relief and immediately vowed to put in more effort. In any case, as the class started to dismiss, Tatsumaki simply stood there while Aizawa left. Because Genos was with them, he didn't see Tatsumaki, who was still glaring at Aizawa, being approached by a girl. You know, glaring at Aizawa-sensei isn't nice, she replied. Tatsumaki turned to face the girl and exclaimed, HMPH, and what do you know? She had never met the girl before. She shared her UA sports uniform, but she was unique in every other way. She wore her black hair in a ponytail that hung over her shoulder. She wore square blue-framed glasses, a pink hairpin at the side of her hair, and purple eyes at the same time. The girl answered chirpily, not much, but I think you and I both know Aizawa-sensei was lying. I did my research before coming here. It pays to be ready for UA, right? Tatsumaki ignored her and exclaimed, HMPH, whatever. Then, without another word, she started to leave. The girl exclaimed, hey, where you going? Did I say something wrong? She gave the departing Tatsumaki a very worried look. Wait, is it because I didn't introduce myself? I'm sorry, my name is? In response, Tatsumaki shouted, I don't care. I already know one sweetness. I don't need to know another. Oh, the girl arched her brow. It was quite depressing, but she was at a loss for words to respond to Tatsumaki. She might or might not be able to. That didn't alter the fact that they had grown apart, though. But the girl's attitude shifted. When the sun's rays reflected off her glasses and a tiny smirk appeared on her face, it was evident. She said inadvertently, "Someone's playing hard to get. HMPH. Aizawa, you liar," said One All Might. As he walked toward Aizawa, his typical smile was on his face. Aizawa had accidentally walked past Saitama and All Might only a few seconds before. However, the man turned to them since they had captured his interest. Aizawa posed a rhetorical question. "Oh, it's All Might and Saitama. So you two were watching, I take it? You must both be free then." All Might said, "A logical ruse. April Fool's was a week ago. He was talking about the recent events. You expelled an entire new class of first graders last year." Saitama said, "You did. That's harsh. According to All Might, that is his method." He then turned to face Aizawa, his arms at his sides, open and at chest level, and said, "He kicks kids out without a moment's hesitation if he judges them as having zero chances." Then his smile expanded and he gestured to him. "This is a complete 180 from what you used to always say. Could it be because you felt it too, right? Midoriya's raw potential and Tatsumaki's willpower." "You too?" asked Aizawa, echoing All Might. Then he turned to Saitama and said, "So you have his back, right? Normally that'd be against your teaching style, and when I need teaching advice, I'll be sure to call an actual teacher, not a poser." Hearing that caused some tension in Saitama. He sensed some resentment from Aizawa, but he wasn't sure why. But the instructor didn't press the issue. He turned away from the two professional heroes instead. The kid's chances are above the 0 mark. As for the girl, her chances could have been higher. However, she is only here due to poor circumstances on her part. Confused, All Might questioned, "Poor circumstance?" Aizawa remarked, So you haven't heard." However, as he went on, he continued without looking at the two. "I guess it makes sense. You only got started today. But that doesn't change the fact that your opinion on the girl is blinded. Ask the principal when you get the chance. I can kick out anyone whose chances drop below that mark at any time. It's not a cruel thing to end the half-assed chasing of a dream, or in her case, paying a debt." Saitama and All Might remained silent in response to the instructor. Both simply stared at the man before he left, making it obvious why. How does this relate to Tatsumaki? All Might pondered. Hearing Aizawa's words earlier had caused a significant shift in his mood. His expression had changed to one of seriousness as he stared at the teacher. "So that's how you show kindness. Aizawa, is that it? But..." All Might added, "Just as I thought, we'll never get along." He turned to his right after that and waved for Saitama to follow. "Come with me, Saitama. There's an explanation I think we're both owed to know." In response, Saitama said, "Say no more, All Might." His expression had changed from one of stoicism to one of seriousness. "I would like to know what he meant just now." "Oi! That's just wrong," screamed Saitama. The pro-hero didn't like what he just heard, but it had been a while. As a result, he slammed his hand so forcefully on Principal Nezu's table that it cracked. That did not sit well with Tank Top Master. He was actually disrespectful when he slammed his hand from the Quirk animal's side onto the principal's table. Now, he and Saitama were facing off because they both exuded a menacing aura. Tank Top Master cautioned, "Caped Baldy, don't go too far. As the personal bodyguard to Principal Nezu, I shall not let anyone threaten his life. Is that clear?" The pro-hero received no response from Saitama. It wasn't because he ignored or didn't care about the warning. All Might, however, stepped in and put his hand on Saitama's shoulder because the tension between the two was too great. All Might said calmly, "Saitama, you need to relax. Like you, I am displeased with what we just heard, but I don't think we've heard everything." According to Principal Nezu, he's right. He looked up at Saitama, calm and collected, unlike Tank Top Master. "Do not get me wrong. I understand your grievance on the matter. But violence won't take us anywhere. The same goes for Tank Top Master." Tank Top Master said, "Oh, sorry." He instantly relaxed and retreated from Saitama. Saitama responded by doing the same. Additionally, he sighed before turning to face the principal, who then spoke. The principal acknowledged, "Yes, it is true that Tatsumaki is here due to a debt. Believe me, this wasn't an easy choice. But when we took into consideration of certain factors, we found that offering the girl a chance into UA was the only best outcome for her." All Might hummed, He then expressed his dissatisfaction with the situation. To think, it was all because I failed to react on time. If I had, she wouldn't have to go through all of this. She doesn't have a hero license yet, and Aizawa was clearly pushing her despite knowing her condition. The principal stated, there is a reason for that. Aizawa was the first to speak against the idea of offering Tatsumaki into UA. Then there was most of the staff. But seeing as she's an Esper, this felt also needed. Espers? Inquired Saitama. That's what Tatsumaki's sister called themselves. Principal Nezu remarked, then I guess you know what they can do. He appeared troubled after that. For a long time, the public have seen Espers as nothing but myths or rumors. Even in a world where 80% of the world has a quirk, an Esper sounds illogical. But then again, even the world government knows about them and has tried to keep them just that way, a rumor. With concern, All Might remarked, this is serious, it was not to his liking. Curious, Saitama said, yeah. Why would they need to keep them as a secret? Tank Top Master said, obvious reasons, Saitama. He stood firmly with his arms folded across his chest. When people began to have quirks, there was chaos. Good, bad, no one knew what to do with people who found power at the time. Now imagine if others knew about these new people. These people that not only have 2, but 3 and possible more abilities. There would be pandemonium. Already there was even an evil organization called Claw that attempted to make an entire army of Espers. It is fortunate they failed. However, the circumstances that led to their collapse is still unclear, even to the Japanese government. All Might acknowledged, I see. Then that means, the other reason Tatsumaki was allowed into UA was. Principal Nezu finished, to keep the government off her. For years, the governments around the world have been watchful of Espers that may pop up around the world. What they do with them is unclear. However, Tatsumaki's case is different. Different? Inquired Saitama. According to Principal Nezu, she's powerful. His voice trembled a little, but he didn't realize it. There are no records of her prior to entering middle school. No parents, no previous medical records, no place of origin or just about anything to pinpoint her existence years ago. It seemed like she just appeared out of nowhere. With a hint of incredulity, All Might uttered, that's impossible. Is it really possible for a child to appear out of nowhere? The principal acknowledged that he honestly didn't know. But what is clear is the fact that the very day she did that act of heroism 10 months ago, it shaken the Japanese government. How did someone so young and yet strong show up so sudden? Who is she? How was able to move about freely without anyone noticing her status? I'm sure those are the questions that were asked. Anyway, I hope now you understand the situation, especially when it came to Aizawa. I'm guessing a part of him wanted to see if Tatsumaki could be a worthy hero. So he pushed her harder than others. Saitama and All Might both remained silent. Particularly for the state of Saitama, they had listened to everything carefully. However, it was evident from their facial expressions and silence that the situation was unlikely. Principal Nezu went on to speak. All Might, Saitama, this is hard for both of you, I know, he replied. But right now, that girl needs Ua more than she may realize it. Please, I ask that both of you do your best to ensure this girl's life isn't tampered. All Might and Saitama turned to face one another and exchanged uncertain looks while remaining silent. As time passed, school was coming to an end. Students were seen leaving the building, primarily with their new friends, from the Ua entrance. When Tatsumaki and Izuku started to move toward the entrance, the same could be said for them. But something else was conveyed by the expression on Izuku's weary face. I'm pooped, he uttered with fatigue. HMPH, Tatsumaki said, frowning slightly. And here I thought you could tough it out. You're weird, you know that. Izuku let out that weary sigh. Come on, Tatsumaki, Iida interrupted, asking, is your finger healed? Izuku was taken aback by the sight of the teenager with the glasses, particularly when he put his hand on his shoulder. Izuku was therefore surprised because he turned to the teenager and felt frightened instantly. Ah, he exclaimed. Oh, hey, Iida. Yeah, recovery girl saw to that. Tatsumaki snubbed, peeved. Recovery girl my ass. Naturally, Izuku and Iida were both taken aback by her remark, but she persisted in her irritation. That woman should have her age checked, she's freaking old. Izuku caught Iida's attention. What's with her, does she really hate recovery girl? Izuku said, I really don't know, I think she just don't like the hero name. Oi! What you two whispering about? Tatsumaki suddenly yelled. She now had her eyes on the two suspiciously until she shifted her focus to Iida. And you? What are you doing, in your opinion? Suddenly trying to be friends with Izuku? Tatsumaki. Izuku opened his mouth to speak, but before he could finish, a certain adolescent girl with a charming smile came over to them. Hi, all three of you. You guys are going to the train station? Oako yelled. Await my arrival. It was so evident that Izuku saw it and immediately stepped back, much to the Espers' annoyance. But luckily she took a deep breath to calm down. Tatsumaki could feel an uncomfortable sensation in her stomach, and it even showed on her face as it turned green. Tatsumaki muttered, damn her, but I'm not going to do it. Her stomach then relaxed, but Iida, who could humorously have a question mark above his head, did not ignore her words or Izuku's response. What was the purpose of that? Did he ask? Izuku explained. Tatsumaki has some biological reaction to her. Naturally, Iida turned to face Izuku, but the teenager retreated with his hands raised in supplication. Honest, I'm not really sure. I see. Hey, quit talking behind my back, Tatsumaki shouted fiercely. At that moment, Oako finally came up to the three of them, and she smiled with relief as she said, I finally made it. You two were discussing something, correct? It should be mentioned that Iida and Oako have not yet given each other a proper introduction, which is why Iida felt somewhat at ease with her when he turned to face her alongside Tatsumaki and Izuku. Iida remarked, You're that Infinity Girl. Infinity Girl? Izuku and Tatsumaki asked, perplexed. Oako gave her name. My name is Uraraka Oako. Hello, you're, Iida Tenya, she said, turning to face Tatsumaki and Izuku. I already know Tatsumaki, she added. You're Midoriya Deku, if I'm not mistaken. Deku? Tatsumaki shouted in surprise. She may have known Izuku for barely a year now, but even she knew his first name. So she was offensive towards her. Oi! I believe you're having a mental breakdown. How did you come up with that as his first name? Oako was a little surprised, but her optimism kept it to herself. That Bakugo kid told me about it. Remember how he called him? She uttered those words. Izuku simply blushed wildly as he stood there fidgeting and avoiding eye contact while Tatsumaki sighed in disappointment and made a facepalm. He moved his hands to his right side and said, Deku is just what Kachan calls me to demean me. Actually, my name is Izuku. Iida was quick to point out, oh, so it's an insult. Good luck. Tatsumaki stated plainly. Oh, really, apologies. Oako gave a sheepish apology. One would think that the conversation would now go on, but Ochako's optimism was evident again when she pumped her fist up while grinning brightly. However, I think the name Deku is kind of cool for you. It gives a sort of never give up vibe, you know, she said with a smile. It wasn't Ochako's words that nearly made Tatsumaki throw up, but rather her expression, so she turned away and started to pant in an attempt to calm herself. It was fortunate that she felt better at the time, because she said, idiot, in reference to Oako. Anyway, don't call him that. Midoriya would never refer to himself as. Hello, my name is Deku. Izuku reddened violently. Whaattt. Incredulous, Tatsumaki turned to face the teenager. Izuku was lying face first on the ground a second later, and Tatsumaki just snubbed at her, turning her back on the teenager, but that didn't mean that she was the same as Iida or Oako. In fact, they were shocked when they saw Izuku's body lying there. Midoriya. Are you alright? Iida yelled. Though it was sufficient to make the other two feel relaxed, Izuku's feeble thumbs-up response to them did not indicate that Iida approved of Tatsumaki's use of her abilities. That was uncalled for. He stated clearly. On school grounds at a time like this, quirks should not be used to harm one another. Phew. Don't care. Tatsumaki snubbed. Midoriya. Wake up. Come on, let's go. Right on. Izuku whispered. Oako and Iida watched as Izuku got up from the ground at that moment. He didn't appear to be hurt, which was not surprising, but he needed to wear his bag well before he could stand up completely. Nevertheless, Iida was still alarmed by the scene. He said cautiously, your friend is violent. Izuku acknowledged, yeah, she certainly is. Surprisingly, though, the teenager was grinning slightly in gratitude as he turned to Tatsumaki. But you know what, she actually means well, he said. She didn't have to say it, but Izuku started to think of the past as Tatsumaki started to leave. He remarked, I was kind of alone with no friends back when we were in middle school, and no one had my back. However, Tatsumaki intervened when she witnessed Kachan harassing me once. He attempted to burn the book, but she saved it. For this reason, despite Tatsumaki's negative opinions, I secretly think she's a decent person. Oako and Iida were both taken aback. It was one thing for the green-haired boy to smile, but quite another for him to describe a lovely moment. In fact, Izuku's smile was so contagious that it nearly left Ochako speechless. Iida thought, remarkable. Now that I think about it, she defended him when I misjudged him on the day of the entrance exam. Ochako added thoughtfully, and there was that time when he beat that giant robot to save me. So awesome. Tatsumaki is so cool, Ochako said. She didn't stay back and let him stay injured. She actually carried him to get help. Now it made sense for both Ochako and Iida. Tatsumaki may be bold, but despite her aggressiveness, she truly had good intentions for Izuku. As the girl was leaving, she abruptly stopped and turned to see Iida, Ochako, and Midoriya approaching her. Hey, how come you two are interacting with Midoriya? Tatsumaki bellowed. Izuku smiled slightly and said, Tatsumaki, before pointing to Iida and Ochako. How about we go for a walk together? Come for a walk together. Tatsumaki was surprised. However, she was also annoyed to hear that as she bent forward. Hey, those two weren't with us, in order to instruct them to. Tatsumaki, please. Ochako cut in. Then Tatsumaki was surprised to see Ochako standing right in front of her, holding the Esper's hand in her own hands while wearing a charmingly cheerful expression. All of us are friends, correct? With sweetness, she inquired. Tatsumaki stumbled. She wanted to scream back and say no, but Ochako's smile was so strong that she turned away, blushing. I don't know. We are all in the same class, so Iida said. Come on, Tatsumaki. Isn't it appropriate for us to all walk together? After all, it's a beautiful day. Izuku was taken aback when he said, Iida. Perhaps it was because he was acting more laid back than his typical firmness, but something about Iida seemed different for the teenager, and Izuku was pleased as he looked at him. I used to think Iida was a scary guy, but he's just a really honest, diligent guy, Izuku thought. In any case, the girl appeared helpless back at Tatsumaki, which was strange because Tatsumaki had never experienced this feeling before, but at last she gave way when she yanked her hand away from Ochako and turned away while wearing that flushed expression. Fine. Don't be lazy, though, she uttered those words. Congratulations. With a broad smile on her face, Ochako threw her hands in the air and cheered. When Tatsumaki heard that, she felt strange, and for a moment, her heart skipped a beat because the red face on her face didn't seem to go away. But she decided not to think about it, and she clutched her hand at her chest and started to leave. Hi, Tatsumaki, Ochako shouted. Huh? When Ochako put her arm around the girl's arm, which appeared to happen quickly, Tatsumaki was shocked once more and blushed in embarrassment. What the devil are you doing? She yelled. Ochako grinned and said, being close. We're friends, right, Tatsumaki? Tatsumaki remained silent, her face unsure of how to respond to being near Ochako's face. She wanted to suppress the girl's intuition, but she refrained and turned away to cover her blush instead. You're causing a lot of trouble, aren't you? She said obstinately. Is something wrong? You're funny, Tatsumaki, Ochako said, laughing. That wasn't a joke. After that, there was Izuku and Iida, who watched the scene closely behind the girls. Although Iida was a little unsure, they found it to be heartwarming and unexpected. I don't think Tatsumaki likes being that close, he replied. Izuku said, yeah, I think so too. He then grinned broadly. But you know what? Even though Tatsumaki doesn't express it, I know that she is okay with this in some way. Iida grinned and said, As soon as Iida and Izuku managed to catch up with the girls, it happened that they were walking out of UA's entrance together, side by side, with a positive feeling. Even Tatsumaki, who was no longer under Ochako's control, was silent about it until she glanced at the arm Ochako had held. Tatsumaki thought, that girl and that guy are going to cause trouble. The girl was experiencing an inexplicable mood, but for some reason, it caused her to turn to Iida, Ochako, and Izuku, who were all to her left. The scene caused her to reconsider, thinking, but, you know what? Maybe a little trouble isn't bad, right? Weird. I never thought anyone would want to be friends with me. The Esper finally smiled and said, damn you, Midoriya. Izuku turned to Tatsumaki abruptly, as Iida and Ochako were discussing something at the time, and for some reason he looked at Tatsumaki, but the girl turned away from him with a flush on his face, and Izuku simply laughed. Izuku honestly thought, I may not have a lot going for me right now, but like Ochako said, I can't give up. But you know what, All Might? Tatsumaki and I have been alone by ourselves for too long, and now I'm just so ecstatic for the both of us that we've gotten far enough to make some real friends. Needless to say, the new chapter in Tatsumaki's life was an ongoing one. The same could be said for Izuku. as they were both embarking on a journey unlike any other they had ever experienced. If they encountered any further difficulties, they would undoubtedly have the support of their new friends. The pro-hero was by himself and back to his usual self, holding a cloth nervously, when All Might said, "Sorry, my boy, but we haven't got any time to relax, the real test starts tomorrow." Somewhere in a hospital, 3 people were moving down the corridor. They looked different from the average, but not so different that it was a problem. In fact, one of them, a child of the 2 older men, was speaking to them in a white karate dojo costume, blonde and spiky-haired, and appeared to be in a good mood. The same could be said of his company. One of them was regarded as one of the best in the martial arts world and the brother of Bang, the other best. As such, the old man was muscular, with long hair that was white, but only on the top of his head, and a classic-style green martial arts robe. As a result, when he, Bang's brother, walked alongside Shiranko, the other man was at the other side of the young man. Unlike however, he showed no signs of aging. In fact, his skill was more in the way of the sword than martial arts. Kamikaze, also known as the Atomic Samurai, wore a traditional loose-fitting white robe, 2 haori, long black hair tied in a topknot, dark eyes, a goatee, and a blade of grass. For the moment, everything appeared to be going well. The 3 of them were conversing, and Shiranko was laughing at one of Kamikaze's remarks. He couldn't help but express how happy he felt. "You know, thanks for coming with me." Shiranko smiled broadly. It really hasn't been easy coming here and seeing Master Bang in such a... With a slight smile, Kamikaze said, "Don't mention it. Bang is a great friend of mine. I hope you haven't been questioning him. Even though he did lose in combat, he is still the strongest. Heck, if he woke up now, I wouldn't be shocked. His brother is here, after all." "But seriously, old age can really hold a person down," said with a slight smile on his face as he rubbed the bald spot on his head. "That is true. I'm not sure if I should share that story because I only came out of a long-term coma 4 months ago." When Shiranko put his on the doorknob to open the door, something felt strange, so Kamikaze grabbed the teen's hand on the doorknob and his other hand on one of his swords. Kamikaze laughed. By this time, the 3 of them had come to the door of the room Bang was administered in. "Wait," Kamikaze cautioned, his suspicious expression instantly alarming Shiranko, but instead of addressing him further, he turned to face gravely and said, "Something doesn't feel right." Added, "I feel a presence," with a serious expression on his face. "You're right. I haven't sensed that presence since." While Shiranko was terrified and perplexed before he peered into the room and saw what had happened, Bomb's eyes widened abruptly, containing a feeling of shock and fear as he came to a conclusion. Kamikaze, without a word, hurried to the door and ran inside, with Bomb trailing behind. Kamikaze and Bomb were standing in a fighting stance, Kamikaze with his katana out and Bomb in a martial arts pose, just a few meters from Bang's bed, but the threat beside Bang didn't seem to bat an eye, and if anything, his presence made Karinko's heart skip a beat as that threat made a shush sound. "Shush, keep quiet. You will awaken him," the threat uttered. "You, what are you doing here, Garo?" screamed Kamikaze angrily. Garo, currently seated on a chair near Bang's bed, smiled back, but instead of responding to Kamikaze, he looked at Bang's coma state and got to his feet. "As for why I'm here, is it really so wrong for a former student to meet his former master?" Garo said, "I sure did a number on you, old man." Garo felt a sudden thread to his neck, and without turning around, he grabbed it with 2 fingers from his other arm before it could reach him. "Aha! Today, someone is behaving recklessly, but really it's a surprise since it's coming from the famous Atomic Samurai," openly mocked Garo. Kamikaze, who had attempted to hit Garo but failed, snarled in a low voice. His sword was now between Garo's fingers, even though the blade should have sliced the human monster's fingers. Garo calmly said, "Anyway, I guess I should get going." Then, using that finger, he snapped Kamikaze's blade and threw what he was holding against a wall, landing a perfect straight strike. It should come as no surprise that this action infuriated Kamikaze, who wanted to kill Garo right there but decided against it, instead moving out of Garo's path and watching the young man walk past Bomb without saying anything. Shiranko was terrified but also enraged, spreading his arms wide to block the doorway, but that didn't mean he complied. If that wasn't enough, he stood there and looked directly at Garo. "You, how dare you?" Shiranko screamed in a faltering tone. "You're the one who put Master Bang in this state, and yet you have the guts too." Karinko's sentence was abruptly interrupted. The reason was Garo, who quickly lifted the young man off the ground by grabbing him by the neck with just 2 fingers. Shiranko! Exclaimed Kamikaze. Bomb screamed, put him down, Garo. There was even more tension between these men now than there had been previously, but instead of paying attention to them, Garo simply tightened his hold on Karinko's neck and strangled him. You talk too much, you know that, he responded. Just because you're his disciple, doesn't mean jack shit that you can ever cross me. You tried standing up to me before and you ended up in the hospital. Heck, I'm even sure it's what happened to you that provoked the old fart to come after me. And we all saw what became of him and his brother. Bomb clicked his tongue angrily. It was one thing to visit his brother. It was quite another to insult and threaten his brother's disciple. He was at his breaking point. That's enough, Garo, screamed Bomb strongly. He stepped forward a few paces and clenched his fists. I will forgive you for coming here, but don't you dare hurt that young man any further. Garo replied, HMPH, and cocked his head at Bomb. Pain was the next thing that occurred. To the surprise of the hospital staff and guests, Garo threw Shiranko at the floor of the hallway. But in spite of the gasps and shocked expressions, Garo left the room and walked past Shiranko while holding his hands in his pockets. That didn't imply that Shiranko was down, though. He actually fought to sit up and turn to face the human monster, despite the pain in his neck and back. Garou ouyuyuyu, he exclaimed fiercely. Without delay, Garo stopped. Although he didn't look at the young man, it was obvious that everyone in the hallway was watching the man from Bomb, Kamikaze, and others. Nevertheless, Shiranko let out a growl without holding back. Walk all big as you want, but I swear he will stop you again. Who? Inquired Garo. The old fart, he asked, turning to face the man. No, Saitama. Garo gave a sly smile back, his red eyes flashed. Oh, I know that. That is why, he said. I'm going to get stronger, I'll be the greatest monster that not even he will be able to stop me. I'll be so strong that every being from every corner of the earth would have to join forces just to stop me. Just you watch, kid. I'm going to bring hell on earth one day. And I haven't even gotten started on the chaos I'll unleash, he said, looking down on Shiranko, in a way so bizarre that even his smile revealed sharp, monstrous teeth. Fearful, Shiranko swallowed. For some reason, Garo exuded a menacing and terrifying aura of evil. Indeed, it was so frightful that some of the employees and guests experienced body trembling and immobility in their legs. But to Garo, none of that mattered much. He turned away without saying anything, but he enjoyed the fear. Those who stood in his way fled and collapsed to the ground in complete terror as Garo laughed. He said ominously, now then, I think it's almost time for a reunion. Isn't that right, Tatsumaki? I have a feeling you're the key to my final stage to a true monster. Thus, with a malevolent aura that permeates the hospital's atmosphere, Garo continued without opposition. He still had the same goal of becoming the strongest monster, and now he is aiming for the Esper he once knew. It's anyone's guess what will happen to the inevitable reunion. There was an opulent yacht cruising in peace in the open ocean somewhere along the U.S. coast. As the costly ship proceeded as planned, there was neither difficulty nor negativity. The owner of it was none other than handsomely masked Sweet Mask, the pro-hero, who was enjoying a matinee while standing by the railing on the front deck. Beautiful, isn't it? A woman's voice inquired. Sweet Mask made a HMPH sound. He was aware of who had spoken, but he chose to look boredly at his glass rather than turn to face her. Aren't you supposed to be in a class right now? The female voice said, what can I say? I have free time. Besides, who says I can't do two things at once? Teaching is a bore anyway. Sweet Mask asked, you're the one who chose it, correct? He then turned his head to his back and looked at the individual. But I must admit, you are indeed a powerful Esper. Being able to make an astral projection all the way from Japan is something I find intriguing. Psychos. Psychos gave him a sly smile. She was currently sitting on a beach chair facing him, wearing a sultry purple bikini. Psychos remarked, ah, aren't you sweet, pro-hero Sweet Mask? How long has it been since we talked? 2, 3 years. 4. Said Sweet Mask. Then he started to move towards Psychos. 4 years ago since the girl escaped and ruined the facility. And to think you would face me after your failure. Do you really think I wouldn't have gotten to you since then? Psychos laughed and remarked, you worry a bit too much. Sweet Mask answered, worry a bit too much, you say? Ironically, he simply laughed and approached Psychos. You know, power is a fundamental tool one must have to gain influence. Now imagine people with quirks having such power. Psychos said, what is this about, Sweet Mask? She became serious and lost her light demeanor. Sweet Mask calmly said, "Patience, my dear. I'm getting to it. There was a time in my life where I idolized heroes. I still do, but, for years I've had a bad taste of the recent ones. With order restored, heroism became a job rather than an obligation. People who are in for the fame and fortune became rampant, and to be honest, it worries a pro-hero like me. I cannot blame the hero killer for going after some of them." "What was the hero killer?" Psychos asked. Sweet Mask replied, "Yes, I think you've heard of him." His eyes turned blood red, and he now stood squarely in front of Psychos, his face dark and menacing. "Though I do not approve of his tactics, he has a point of this present life we've gotten adjusted to. That is why, when you approached me to make my dream of true heroes, I funded you to create what you called Oxform Labs. I also gave you the resources and anything else just to get specific subjects. Subjects that would arise to replace this decay that is false heroism in this world. But do you know what I found?" Suddenly, Psychos' astral body trembled. Just inches from her face, Sweet Mask was staring at her with a frightful expression after slamming his hand on a nearby table. Menacingly, Sweet Mask asked, "You lied to me, didn't you?" Psychos let out a choked, "A Sweet Mask." Sweet Mask cut in, "Shut it and listen. I don't know what your true goal is, but just know this. Never cross my path again or else I might do something you'll regret." Psychos gave a frown in return. The role she was in didn't appeal to her, so, with rage in her eyes, she sat up. "Now you listen here, you little. Be gone. I have no more use of you anymore." The pro-hero then quickly slashed his hand across the woman's abdomen. She was undoubtedly not killed by this, but it did cause the astral projection to vanish. Before he collected himself and pushed a few hairs behind his ear, all that was left was Sweet Mask. "I let my anger get the best of me. I can't let that happen again," he stated. He then faced the rising sun while lying on his back. "That woman couldn't be trusted, of course, I knew that from the beginning. Fortunately, her research I recovered has proven vital and now it's time for me to make my own move." Then the pro-hero started to leave. "I will save this world from the heretic heroes that have occupied it. I just need that girl. What was her name again? Ah, yes, Fubuki. She holds the catalyst. HMPH, I guess the saying is true. If you want something done right, then do it yourself." The pro-hero's purpose was thus made clear, but it was unclear exactly what he had planned for Tatsumaki's younger sister. The real her yelled and clutched her stomach back with Psychos. Her mind responded as though she had had a physical encounter with Sweet Mask. Her students behind her were therefore alarmed, particularly when a particular black-haired girl stood in front of her. Fubuki said, "Alice-sensei, are you okay?" With a sigh, Psychos took her hand off her stomach. Being suspicious in front of the girl was the least she could have done. As a result, she turned to face her with a charming expression and a tiny smile. She remarked, "Always so sweet, Fubuki." The woman had changed appearance. She actually looked completely different. She didn't wear glasses and had short blonde hair. She also had blue eyes and wore a purple feminine suit. "Anyway," she added, "now sit down." "I'm fine. I just felt a little nagging in my tummy, you know." Fubuki sat down and said, "I see. My apologies, sensei." Psychos then turned around and resumed writing on the board, but although she appeared composed, her thoughts were not. "You have no idea what line you just crossed, Sweet Mask. By assuming I could get your assistance once more, I undervalued you. However, I realize now that I was mistaken. Now, it doesn't matter. For now, I'll let my little infiltrator handle Tatsumaki, and I'll just watch Fubuki until the time is appropriate." There was plenty of excitement at UA, an academy for young people who wanted to be heroes, but today was different. Despite being a school for future heroes, everything felt so normal for the Class 1A. As she sat motionless and observed the obnoxious and noisy pro-hero, Present Mike, instructing, Tatsumaki even became aware of this. "Hey, I'm not annoying," complained Present Mike. Tatsumaki yelled angrily, "Yes, you are, now shut up and don't interrupt." Music Mike muttered a few grumbling words and went back to his lesson. Tatsumaki, on the other hand, just huffed as she received a few looks from her classmates and even a whisper from Momo. She inquired, "What was that about?" Minoru responded, "That's probably the fourth wall being broken." Momo turned to the girl in confusion and asked, "What? What?" Minoru blinked, perplexed as well. Regardless, time passed before afternoon arrived. But because of what the students would have to study, the situation was different. Izuku was looking forward to their daily foundational heroics studies. In fact, when the door was pushed aside and a certain number 1 pro-hero came in with his well-known smile, the excitement level increased even further. "It's me!" he shouted with joy. "You came!" exclaimed Izuku. But the pro hero didn't end there. He held both sides of the entrance with the rest of his body pushed forward, and his well-known laugh reverberated throughout the classroom. He cried out, through the front door like a normal person. Almost everyone in the class was thrilled to see him after that. As soon as the pro hero entered the classroom in an odd way, the heroes began to whisper and comment about him. Those who had no feelings for the pro hero were Tatsumaki and Katsuki, who simply turned their heads in disgust. At the same time, both said, "Show off." When their eyes widened, they were both obviously taken aback. However, none of them looked at the other after a moment. In any case, as he spoke, the pro hero posed and showed off his muscles back at all might. Foundational Hero Studies. "For this class, we'll be building up your hero foundation through various trials," he roared. And then he turned to face them, holding a square plate that read, "Battle. Let's jump right in with this. The trial of battle." "The trial," laughed Katsuki. "Of battle," Izuku added, less enthusiastically. After that, All Might spread his arms wide and went on. "And to go with your first battle, we've prepared the gear we had you send in requests for to match your quirks." "Our battle gear!" cried Izuku. Ajiro stood up and exclaimed, "Awesome," with excitement. Tatsumaki said, "HMPH. It's about time we get to do something." But unlike others, she appeared irritated as she crossed her arms over her chest and reclined in her seat. Luckily, she wasn't the only one. As he reached for his bag, Izuku actually appeared to be among the most enthusiastic. He shouted, "My costume!" All Might went on. He then bravely started to leave, saying, "Get changed and we'll be ready to go. Everyone gather at Grounds B. The garb you bring into the battlefield is vitally important, boys and girls. And don't forget, from here on out, you're all officially heroes." The costume subsidy. Teens are required to submit a report detailing their body specifications and quirks prior to being admitted to the academy. In this manner, a company that is connected to the school uses that information to create their ideal costumes. The system runs smoothly. Additionally, specific requests were accommodated, and as a result, their cutting-edge costumes were created. As a result, although many students were successful in submitting their perfect costumes, very few others encountered difficulties. For example, Tatsumaki had her own issues, and Izuku had to ask All Might about his costume and quirk registration. A flashback to a few months ago was therefore required. At the time, Tatsumaki was growing irritated. Litters of papers with rudimentary designs covered the round table at which she sat in her tiny apartment. She had no interest in hero costumes and was not an artist. But every design she failed at only made her more enraged until she was unable to control herself. Her quirk came to life and she raised the papers into the air, causing the Esper to scream in rage. The papers then spin quickly until they are torn into shreds, which fall to the ground. The words, "This is so frustrating," shouted Tatsumaki into the air. Then she growled and slammed her fist down on the table. "So what if I don't have a hero costume? I can still kick ass more than any of those heroes. Besides, I don't want to look like a slut like that giant heroine on TV. So if anything, having no hero costume saves time and money. I don't need a costume." Fubuki gave a mildly disappointed shake of her head. When she witnessed her sister's overreaction, she was a few feet behind her, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies in her green glowing hands. Instead of saying anything there, though, she went to her sister's side and set the cookie on the table. Fubuki remarked, "There you go making excuses again, big sis." Tatsumaki shouted angrily at her sister, "What did you say? If this is about your fanatics for heroes again, you can say goodbye to buying the next issue of that manga you like." "No," comically whimpered Fubuki. But Tatsumaki ignored her sister's advice. Still thinking about her sister's threat, she simply turned away in frustration and placed her hand beneath her head as her sister fell on her butt. "Besides," muttered Tatsumaki, "getting this hero costume seems such as a major deal. I don't get it anyway." Grinning, Fubuki said, She appeared to forget her sister's threat all of a sudden. So she became direct. "Well, that's the thing, big sister. A hero costume represents something in a hero's life." Tatsumaki turned to face her sister and asked, "What? A fashion sense? Maybe that makes sense with how much of an attention seeker the giant woman is with her costume being skin tight." Fubuki said, "Ah, you mean Mount Lady. Actually, I wouldn't use her as a good example, big sister. She did steal Kamui's victory of that villain months back." Tatsumaki turned away and said, "Whatever." Fubuki was let down. Although she could see her sister wasn't like that, she secretly wished she would carry on the conversation. She nevertheless used her talent to levitate a few fragments of the torn papers into one nearly flawless page that had the appearance of a bad costume. Immediately, Fubuki said, "This is awful." Tatsumaki didn't take well to that. The next thing she did was get up and slam both hands on the round table while bending her upper body forward and glaring at Fubuki, which infuriated her. "A furious, and you think you can do better?" she screamed. Fubuki gave a chirpy smile and said, "Pretty much." Then the little Espers quirk came on. As a result, she used it to lift her school bag out of its original position and set it directly beside her. Then, as she went on talking, she reached into the bag and started taking books out. "Do you remember that one hero costume design I made for you months ago?" she inquired. Tatsumaki replied, "Yeah, and I remember shredding that stupid thing." Then, before her eyes grew dangerous, they widened in realization. "Wait, didn't I tell you to not draw any of those stupid hero stuff?" The calm Fubuki said, "You didn't. You told me heroes don't exist. You also said you weren't going to be one. But here we are now." Tatsumaki straightened up and sighed. She also turned her head away and folded her arms across her chest. "She thinks that way because I haven't told her about the debt," she thought. Fubuki eventually located what she was seeking. She put the sketchbook on the table and turned to face her sister. Fubuki stated candidly, "Ever since that time, I actually took what you said into consideration. I haven't been in this world as long as you have. In fact, you've been the only one that I can rely on for as long as I can remember. But despite that, I want to be some help to you. That is why I spent hours learning how to draw. I had Lily and my arts teacher teach me the techniques in drawing until finally I made a sketchbook on it." Tatsumaki appeared unimpressed. If anything, she simply cocked her head toward her sister and gave her a chilly glare. Naturally, Fubuki was a little uneasy around this Tatsumaki figure, so he grudgingly stood up and started to leave. As she moved away, Fubuki remarked, "Well, I better be going. Saitama wants to go shopping and I thought that I could go and learn a few things about it." When she reached the door, she opened it and faced her sister once more. Her eyes were beseeching this time. "Please just take a look at it. Bye." The small Esper left after saying that, shutting the door behind her. Tatsumaki was the only one who kept staring at the door until her gaze shifted to the sketchbook. She made a nasty remark, "What a waste." The girl then bent down to pick up the book and then straightened back up, following her strict emotion. "I want so much for Fubuki to have a normal life from all of this. But at least she's considering what I told her back then. Anyway, I should confiscate this book to set another example." Tatsumaki turned away at that. A sudden thought struck her as she was fully focused on finishing the book. She paused and raised the sketchbook to her face, but she wasn't sure how. "Hold on, what am I thinking?" she pondered. "Fubuki put a lot of effort into doing this for me, even though I understand that she is still dealing with her heroism phase. It wouldn't hurt to have a look, anyway. If it appears to be having a detrimental effect on Fubuki, I might be able to confiscate it after that." The green-haired Esper was taken aback as he opened the book. The sketchbook was more than she had anticipated. Tatsumaki was depicted in various poses and wearing a well-known heroic costume with an addition in every sketch on every page, demonstrating how much Fubuki had improved. It was so good, in fact, that Tatsumaki lost herself in it as she turned each page and her mood relaxed. Was all of this really drawn by Fubuki? Tatsumaki pondered. She was both shocked and incredulous at the same time. "I had no idea." Tatsumaki soon arrived at the final page. She thought it would be just as good as the others, but it was even more amazing. Fubuki had sketched a flawless image of herself and Tatsumaki smiling and holding hands, with some text underneath. "The world's greatest sister is my big sister. Despite her occasionally cruel behavior, she always seems to be there for me. She was upset with me when I scraped my knee 2 years ago, as I recall. She didn't blame me, though. In addition to tending to the wound, she brought me some ice cream to help me stop crying. She was very kind to do that. Naturally, though, this won't be her only deed of generosity. She is my sister, and I adore her. I hope to be as resilient as she is someday. Perhaps that day will arrive. I'm not sure yet. However, this is one thing that is certain. Big Sister Tatsumaki, you have my undying love." The sister of the greatest Esper in history is Fubuki. One drop of tears landed on the sketchbook. Tatsumaki had truly been struck in the heart by Fubuki's remarks. One could actually see a girl sobbing quietly while gazing at the book if they were to see Tatsumaki there and then. Tatsumaki thought, "Fubuki, damn you." She wasn't regretting or angry. No, as she squeezed the book in her hand, She appeared both appreciative and ashamed. All this time, I thought you would come to despise me. Sure, we had our happy times together, but I never imagined you had a good opinion of me. Damn it, why must you be such a kind little sister? Tatsumaki then wiped the tears from her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. She did what she thought at the time because she had already made up her mind. She turned the pages of the sketchbook until she found a dramatic pose of herself and ripped the page off. She looked at it from there. Fubuki, you know what? She thought, this doesn't look so bad, and grinned. The time had finally arrived. Class 1A hero costumes were all set up and ready to go. For this reason, every student had their own moments as they passed through the enormous entrance gate. Even Tatsumaki, who wanted the costume, could feel the black material against her skin. So, as they got closer to the end, she passed through the gate. This costume. I still don't want to be a hero. But Tatsumaki gave it careful thought. Fubuki spent a lot of her time helping an uninspired sister like me. I didn't give a damn if I ended up being the antagonist in her life. Heck, until then, I never really thought about it. Thus, Ua is not the only reason for this costume. My sister put a lot of love and effort into this costume. I promise not to let you down, Fubuki. Just keep an eye on me. Let me show you a real sister you can be proud of. When she and the others entered the gate, Tatsumaki's hero costume was on full display. She was dressed in a tight-fitting black dress with long sleeves, black small heels, and hour-high leg slits that exposed her legs. In contrast to its original design, it featured black skin-tight shorts that exposed a bit too much of her thighs and other areas while reaching nearly to her knee. But still, I feel like I'm a little exposed, Tatsumaki mused, shuddering. However, she was unaware that a certain small pervert was giving her shorts an excessive amount of attention. She probably felt that way because of him. In any case, Izuku came out of the tunnel last. There, Tatsumaki had a slight frown on her face and her arms crossed in front of him. She said, well, it's about time you showed up. Izuku said, sorry, Tatsumaki. Then he saw Tatsumaki's outfit. You look really great. I mean your hero costume. Tatsumaki obstinately tipped her head away and exclaimed, HMPH. Whatever. Let's just get this dumb test over with. Ah. Deku. Tatsumaki. Exclaimed Ochako himself. Since she was also dressed as a hero, she was turned in their direction. Cool costume, you too. They look really practical. Izuku appeared shocked and astonished by Ochako's outfit, which fit her very well. Her outfit included a skin-tight suit with detachable sleeves, thick round braces with handles attached, knee-high boots, a belt, a helmet, and a collar. Ochako blushed. I wish I'd drawn my request sketch a little better, she said. She also had a sheepish expression on her face and a hand behind her head. She remarked, my costume came out puff. HMPH. Tatsumaki merely shoved it away. To the surprise of Izuku and Ochako, she then walked away angrily without saying anything. She said, wait, did I say something wrong? Izuku opened his mouth to speak. However, Minoru came up to him, gave him the thumbs up, and left him perplexed. According to Minoru, heroics are the greatest. In any case, All Might returned to the task at hand and stood in front of everyone. As anticipated, he praised their hero costumes until he saw Izuku's and realized that the teen's mask's long ears matched his own long, spiky blonde hair. Luckily, he said nothing offensive about it. In order to attract the pro-hero's attention, Tenya Iida then held up his hand. Sensei. Regarding the performance ground we'll be using, is it the mock city from the entrance exam? He inquired. Is that a four eyes problem? Tatsumaki looked at the person beside her and asked. Iida wore a one-piece suit in black and white with a high collar over his various armor pieces, including a face-covering helmet. You'll see, All Might said, flashing his trademark smile. In fact, take 2 steps and you'll be there. This will be an indoor battle trial. Monsters are a problem outdoors due to their chaotic desire to destroy, birthed from either an obsessive behavior, natural birth of nature or scientific experimentations. However, today we'll be dealing with villains. And with that, he went on. Villain cleanup is usually seen out in the open, but statistically, the better part of it is an indoor job. Most acts of villainy are committed indoors. Imprisonment, house arrest, the black market. In this hero-saturated society, why any villain with intelligence is lurking in the shadow. So for this test, you'll separate into villain and hero groups for a 2-on-2 team battle. Suyu inquired, what about the foundational training? A green and black skin-tight suit with yellow linings that mimicked the markings on a frog's skin was her hero costume. She also wore black gloves, boots with a frog-like pattern, and goggles. All Might lifted his fist to his face with a smile and exclaimed, "This is the foundational training. Only this time, there won't be any robots. It'd be okay to just destroy." A few of the students then asked the questions. Some of them made sense, but Yuga didn't seem to be interested enough in his costume to pose a serious query. Even so, All Might was annoyed that they were asking questions at the same time, but he refrained from saying it. "I can't hear you if you speak all at once." The pro hero then proceeded to read from a small piece of paper that he had opened. He informed them that, for this training, we'll have some villains guard a nuclear weapon they intend on deploying. The heroes must stop them in their nefarious scheme before it's too late. If the heroes capture the villains or reach the nuclear core before the time runs out, they win. If the villains manage to keep the core the whole time or capture the heroes, they win. The pro hero then proceeded to add to a lottery box. Your teammates and opponents will be chosen by lottery. Iida was taken aback. Is that really how we'll do it? At that moment, Izuku clarified. Well, pros are often forced to make impromptu team-ups with other B-heroes they might not know very well, so this is probably testing that, he continued. All Might thought Izuku's analysis was excellent. He exclaimed as a result, lifting his arm into the air. I see, always with our eyes on the future, are we? I apologize, anyway. Let's start this. Ochako Uraraka and Izuku Midoriya, Team B. Mezzo Shoji and Shoto Todoriki. Momo Yayorozu and Minoru Mineta, Team Circa Tatsumaki and Katsuki Bakugo, Team D. Team E. Yuuga Aoyama and Mina Ishido Team F. Riki Sato and Koji Koda. Team G. Kyoka Jiro and Denki Kaminari Team H. Tsuyu Asui and Fumikage Tokiyami. Team I. Toru Hagakure and Mashirao Ojiro Akemi Toshi and Honda Saro, Team J. Team L. Eijiro Kirishima and Tenya Iida, Line. Everybody selected for different teams reacted differently. Katsuki and Tatsumaki were among those who resented the decision, but the majority accepted it as it was. Regarding Izuku and Ochako, Izuku appeared too anxious to talk, but the girl grinned broadly about it. All Might wasn't finished yet, anyway. To choose the first pairs to engage in combat, he dipped his hands into two boxes labeled Hero and Villain. As a result, he held a ball in each hand when he extended them. The first one was designated A, and the second, D. Pair A will be heroes, declared All Might. Pair D will be the villains. Izuku and Katsuki were taken aback by it. It's obvious that they hadn't anticipated running into each other so quickly. Regarding Tatsumaki and Ochako, Ochako appeared concerned, and the girl simply appeared tense as she averted her gaze. In any case, it wasn't long before the scene changed. All Might told Ochako and Izuku, the heroes, to wait 5 minutes while Katsuki and Tatsumaki went inside the building to enter the heads of the villains. Of course, surveillance footage would be available for everyone else to view. They were free to use their quirks in an offensive manner, but if they went too far, the test might be stopped. Tatsumaki touched what is referred to as the nuclear core. Given that she and Katsuki were in a room in the tallest section of the building, it was obviously a prop. But the girl frowned and stared at the bomb, as if she had something on her mind. Over the years, I've made a concerted effort to never be the bad guy. I'm playing such a role now. Even if it's only a stupid test, this is awful, the Esper thought. Oi! Tatsumaki! Exclaimed Katsuki. Tatsumaki turned back to him in response. She kind of expected the teenager to be upset, but what he did next caught her off guard. Tatsumaki was forced to retreat to the nuclear core prop as he approached her so quickly. As if that weren't enough, the blonde teenager glared at her face intently before slamming his hand on the object. With an angry shout, Katsuki exclaimed, "How long has Deku had it? That quirk? You knew about it, didn't you? Don't play dumb with me, Tornado." Tatsumaki remained silent in reply. Rather, she stayed silent while sharing a passionate moment with Katsuki, scowling slightly before pushing him away and leaving the room to one side. Without looking back, Tatsumaki shot back, "Get that close again and I'll make you regret it." Then, with her arms folded across her chest, she stopped. As for Midoriya, I didn't know about his quirk until later on, but if you're so intent on finding out the truth, then there's only one thing to do. Katsuki remained silent. His intense resentment of Tatsumaki was well known. Tatsumaki, however, tilted her head at him with a neutral expression on her face, revealing what she had in mind despite this. She urged him to beat him up. Katsuki screamed, "Are you fucking with me?" "Believe me, I wouldn't dream of it," Tatsumaki said, scowling. She then turned back to him completely, her expression emotionless. But when you think about it, how else will he tell you? You feel he played you, right? Then beat the crap out of him to the point that he's begging to tell you everything. Katsuki clicked his tongue angrily, then turned and left. He had good reason to do so, particularly as he was speaking. Katsuki angrily declared, I don't need a fucking windblower to tell me what to do. But just know this, I'll be coming for you too one day. Tatsumaki did not respond. Instead, she watched the irascible teenager leave the room without making any facial expressions. The reasons behind her sudden animosity toward Izuku were partially disclosed in her mind. Midoriya must be ready for the worst in order to be strong. You fool, good luck. Bakugo will no longer hold you back. He had a big smile on his face, full of excitement and anger, after returning to Katsuki. Deku. You were laughing at me the entire time. Katsuki thought vehemently. You fucking nerd. I will cause you to regret that. Izuku and Oako, meanwhile, were standing a few feet away from the building. They were holding a small map of the building, which was several stories tall, and they could use it to find their way around. Oako put her other hand on her hip and remarked, a layout of the building. I guess we have to commit it to memory. It doesn't seem there are any penalties like Aizawa-sensei, so I'm relieved. All Might's as nice in person as his image on TV. Thus, although Oako appeared content, Izuku was not. Indeed, the charming adolescent girl quickly became aware of it when she turned to face him and noticed his anxious perspiration. You don't look relieved, she cried, surprise. Izuku said, oh no, sorry. When he turned to her, he was able to relax a little. It's just, my opponent is Kachan and Tatsumaki too. I guess I'm just really tense. Tatsumaki, Oako pondered. Her face then took on a worried expression before she blinked and spoke to Izuku. I see, I remember now, it was Bakugo who keeps bullying you. I guess it must be nice to have someone as strong as Tatsumaki to help you. Izuku whispered, Tatsumaki was. After a brief silence, he resumed his conversation. Tatsumaki was the first girl I ever talked to. We didn't really know each other almost throughout middle school. But despite all that, despite being a stranger, she was the first to stand up against Kachan. That courage, that resolve, that look of straightforwardness even when things seemed troublesome, I can't help but admire that. Oako mumbled, wow, she was shocked. But it's pretty obvious that she and I are complete opposites, Izuku reflected thoughtfully. I'm weak and intimidated, but she's bold and self-assured. As I had assumed, we are complete opposites with little in common. A girl with a fantastic quirk who doesn't want to be a hero, and a boy who wants to be a hero but has no quirks. I even questioned whether or not I was present at the alley. If Tatsumaki had finally stepped in to stop that villain, and I had truly turned away. If Tatsumaki had wielded one for all instead of me, would I still have it? To be honest, I'm afraid of the idea. Oako yelled, Deku? She looked him in the face, as if she was more worried about him. Is this about Bakugo? In response, Izuku said, no. Then, with the lower portion of his mask in his hand, he turned away. He then clenched his fist as a flashback of Katsuki occurred to him. I was just thinking about Tatsumaki. But right now I should be focused on Kachan. I hate his guts, but I also admire him, his ambition, his confidence, his strength, his quirk. Both him and Tatsumaki are even better than me in 100 different ways. Oako said nothing. Izuku was having a direct and honest moment because he appeared to be somewhat determined. So he added by saying when he put on the remainder of his mask. All the same, this time I feel I don't want to lost, if that makes sense. Oako chirped, so this must be fate. The bonds between former middle schoolmates. Izuku was surprised at her response. So he started shakily. Oh man, I'm sorry for blabbering on about something that has nothing to do with me. It does too, insisted Oako. We're a team now, aren't we? Let's do our best. The two then appeared to be ready to go. The rest of the students and All Might were in the same building's basement. Everybody could see several monitors in front of them that displayed various locations throughout the building. Regarding All Might, he decided to use a grading book to assign grades to the pupils, particularly to Tatsumaki and Izuku. At this point, he had no preference for any of them. Thus, Izuku and Oako sneaked through a window back to the main floors of the building. Izuku took the lead after that, with Oako trailing behind. We've entered, but we must now be prepared, Izuku thought astutely. Thankfully, I have some degree of control over One for All. That implies that if necessary, I can use it in a hand-to-hand conflict. However, I have to be careful not to cross the line or I could kill someone. We have a real chance of winning because of Uraraka's zero gravity. weapon and my ability to control her strength. After giving that some thought, Izuku became aware of his surroundings. In the notebooks he created after witnessing seasoned pro heroes in action, he adhered to specific procedures. He and Ochako were therefore doing well as they moved between passageways and corridors while paying attention to their surroundings. That did not, however, imply that everything went as planned. Actually, as the two were about to pass a passage, Katsuki was seen flying forward by Minoru from the basement surveillance. A sudden ambush, he exclaimed, startled. Katsuki launched an attack a second later. He attempted to blast Izuku with an explosion but failed. Izuku was able to swiftly grab Ochako and leap out of his blast's range before landing on the ground with his suit still on because, for whatever reason, his senses were sharper. Izuku mumbled, "That was unexpected. He almost grazed me there. Are you okay, Uraraka?" "Yeah. Thanks," exclaimed Ochako. But the way her voice sounded, she was shaky. He came like a bolt. Ochako noticed the smoke from Katsuki's explosion dissipating as she looked forward. Therefore, his voice was full of frustration, and when he rose from the ground, he appeared menacing in the clearing smoke. He yelled, "Damn it, Deku! Don't dodge me." "I thought so," Izuku, taking his place again, said. "With me as his opponent, Kachan's priority would definitely be to beat me up." Katsuki was prepared now. With his right arm extended, he charged at Izuku, prepared to launch another barrage at the green-haired teenager. Even when he got close, he smiled madly. "I'll blow you away, but just short of getting this interrupted," he roared. But then something unexpected occurred. Izuku grabbed the arm the teenager was going to use to close the distance between him and his bully. He then spun while holding Katsuki and threw him away with such force that he struck the end of the passageway with a loud, agonized cry coming out of his mouth, using what little one for all he could control. In addition, there were spider web cracks on the wall that Katsuki had collided with. "Wow, that was incredible," says Ochako with a smile. However, the girl wasn't alone. The other students had noticed Izuku's speed and throw and were shocked by what had just transpired. With a broad, beaming smile, Kenji said, "That throw was amazing. So manly to confront Bakugo like that." "I know, right?" Mina cried with delight, as expected from the person who got first place in the entrance exam. Tenya concurred, "Indeed. But now that I think about it, the top 3 who passed the entrance exam are all in one building. Bakugo number 3, Tatsumaki number 2 and the number 1, Midoriya. This might turn out to be quite the battle." The traces of Katsuki's smoke had cleared back at the battle. Now, as Kachan started to get back up on his feet, Izuku stood with a resolute look on his face. What on earth was that? Katsuki pondered in frustration. Did I really get read by that little shit? Deku, damn you. Izuku called, "Kachan." He was untarnished and stood with assurance. "You always lead with a big right swing. I can't count how many times I've seen you do it. I analyzed and took notes on all the heroes I thought were amazing, including you." Katsuki's anger rose as he raised his head to look at Izuku. Being disparaged by the same person he treated was one thing, but being talked down by him was quite another. However, Izuku's bright determination persisted as he took a stance and held his fist forward. "The same notes you tried to blow up and toss, I'm not longer the Deku you equated with a worthless guppy. Now I'm Deku, whose vibe is never giving up." When Ochako heard this, he was shocked. It brought back memories of the day she had told Izuku how much she enjoyed the sound of the word Deku, but it wasn't a bad thing. That didn't work out well for Katsuki, though, as he gave Izuku a glare. He said angrily, "You used to piss your pants before me, now I see how it is. Finally, you show me that damn quirk of yours." Katsuki didn't contain his anger after that. "I hate listening that girlfriend of yours, but I'm really pissed right now. I'm going to beat the living crap out of you, Deku." "Friend? What?" Ochako asked. Is he referring to Tatsumaki? No, it's not possible. Surely Tatsumaki won't want her friend to suffer harm? But there was no time to respond. Katsuki's simultaneous explosions from his palms behind him caused him to leap forward, which was the reason. Naturally, Izuku took a step back and looked at this. "Go now, Uraraka, go without me," he yelled. Katsuki gave the teen with the green hair a sidekick. Ochako, at the same moment, fled silently. Even though she was worried about him, she knew she should seize the opportunity. Additionally, while the attacking teen was still in the air, Izuku took advantage of the opportunity to wrap a piece of tape around his leg. Izuku said, "Proof of capture." He saw this as his opportunity, even though he had to be hit. He was using the tape to show that the villain had been apprehended. As Izuku attempted to wrap it around Katsuki's leg, this worked well. Notebook number 10. Page 18. I can already picture it. Izuku pondered. He was discussing one of his many hero notes. What is he going to do next? Kachan will start acting hurried if I know him. That's what Katsuki did. He slammed his hand down hard on Izuku and exploded violently for his head. However, Izuku ran out of his way, so he missed. And just as I had anticipated, the right swing arrived. He reconsidered. Most of the students were shocked by the battle when they returned to the basement of the building. Izuku had deftly avoided Katsuki's explosion once more. All Might, who was aware of the team's hero otaku knowledge and the way he demonstrated one for all, was obviously impressed by this scene. But the fight was far from over. As they looked into each other's eyes, Katsuki turned back to face Izuku, who stood up again wearing his hero costume. I got him. Izuku made a mental note. The rest won't be easy, though, because he pushed me back against the wall. I feel validated. Katsuki yelled, now you've done it, Deku. As he opened his palms upward and released ferocious explosions, he displayed no hesitation or signs. That quirk of yours is no match for mine, and I'm going to prove it by smashing that shit of a face with this, now die. Katsuki then made a beeline for Izuku. Even though Izuku was a little afraid, the brief distance between them was sufficient for him to collect himself. So he clenched his fist and charged directly at Katsuki. Kachan, I'm not going to cry or run away any longer, Izuku yelled at him. They were near each other for a few seconds. Izuku swung his right fist for the teenager as Kachan extended his right arm to detonate another blast. When they cut the distance, none of them wanted to back down because there was a lot riding on this moment. Devastation ensued as a consequence. Izuku screamed loudly and swung his fist, while Katsuki swung his right arm. So that passageway was heavily impacted, and there was a loud boom. Ochako felt the floor tremble beneath her feet and staggered. She became worried and asked, what the, was that Deku and Bakugo? Please just be okay, Deku, I'll get to Tatsumaki and finish the test for us. Tatsumaki bit into a cookie and grinned. Now she was alone in the room, sitting there levitating herself in the air with the nuclear core prop behind her. She enjoyed eating the little bag of cookies that was present at the same time. With a menacing smile, Tatsumaki declared, everything is going as I expected. He won't hold back against Midoriya by firing up Bakugo, especially now that he's shown him his quirk. I could be the winner and put an end to this, but I've been meaning to talk to this girl for a while. Tatsumaki muttered, Uraraka, then a snickering grin spread across her face, and her eyes glow bright green. In fact, you made that moron call himself that stupid name. I'm going to enjoy what I have in store for you now, so come on, sweet little sunshine. After I'm done with you, that sunlight of yours might permanently set. Come and educate me with your lovely words. The tornado of terror then waited for her victim to show up. The idea of what she had in mind was frightening, particularly given the villainous persona she had now taken on.
I will continue this story in next part. Till then, bye bye.